Hello, everyone. So first of all, thank you for joining our first hybrid workshop. So today we will discuss solid-state metal batteries towards a circular economy, and we will discuss the potential versus the challenges. I would like to present Lionel Fourdrinier. He is the coordinator of the Walloon initiative for circular materials, and he will present today in our welcome session, Innovation and Circular Economy in Walloon region.
Does everybody hear me now? I think it's good, okay. So thank you very much for attending this hybrid online workshop. As you can see, it's still not perfect, but we will try to make the best as we can. It is a side event also of the Seatbelt European project, and we are located here in Liège in CRM. We are nearly 30 people in the room, mainly in the back of the room, so we don't bite. You can come on the front part, but okay, so here what I would like to do today is to have a very short presentation of what is CRM and to present you the initiative, the Walloon initiative for circular materials. Okay, first, welcome in CRM, even online or physically. So we are an independent research organization that was founded in 1948. We are located in different locations in Wallonia and in Flanders, all over the Belgium, finally, 6 sites in total, and having more than 75 years of experience. We are now more than 290 researchers located in different buildings. The building where we are today is on the top right, for instance, and we have a global budget of 46 million euros, in which about 10% is reinvested each year as a capex to help us to grow our pilot lines, a remarkable set of pilot lines. We have a total of 20,000 square meters of lab surfaces, as I said previously. Our development axis, we restructure our center into 6 main platforms. The first one, which is transversal to all of them, is a process product application development, in the sense that we want to have a holistic approach when developing new materials, for instance, on new process or new products. And we can range from the lab up to the industrial scale. We have a lot of pilot line facilities, and we can help the customers, our customers, to transfer to industrial scale. We are active mainly in 5 different domains, so energy shift, as we are all together today, and especially batteries, on which we can play as well on the current collectors, the electrode deposition, as well as the recycling part, which will be, with circular economy in general, the main topic of the day. We are also we have also experience in advanced manufacturing, Industry 4.0, circular economy, which is really transversal actually to the other platforms, and construction. Initially, I plan to show you a video of what is CRM Group. It is a 4-minute video. I won't do that because I'm not sure at all that it would work. So what I would suggest you, that you, if you are online or in the room, that you just scan the QR code, and when you are 3 minutes left in your day during the dinner, for instance, you can just have a look on this video that explains why we are working in circular economy and the close relationship that we have with our industrial customers. Okay. Now, moving to the Wallonia scale, I just wanted to give a brief overview of what is Wallonia. Actually, Wallonia is at the heart of the blue banana, which is some kind of corridor where you have a major part of the roads and the rails that you can find in Europe, which makes a place quite convenient for any fluxes, any flows of materials that you want to treat. And we are quite close from big European cities, which is unfortunately major producers of waste product that should be recycled. We have a long history in working with metals mainly, but also minerals, plastics, and we have a lot of companies, strong in the industrial tissue, which makes that we have a lot of technical skills in the field, but also research skills, since we have a lot of R&D centers that are dedicated to work on that kind of materials, and universities with which we have a strong partnership. We have also, we are quite lucky also to have two big initiatives going on at Walloon level. The first one, which is called Circular Wallonia, which is an initiative that aims to combine social, ecology, and economy challenges that we have to face in the coming decades, stating that circular economy is one part of the solution, maybe not the only one, of course, but it's part of the solution phase to face the societal challenges that we have. And also, some of them should know that Europe has launched its smart specialization strategy, which makes that each region, each country has to specialize in some innovation fields. And what we decided in Walloon region is to have circular economy as one of the 5 pillars, one of the 5 initiative as a strategic innovation initiative as strategic. So that being said, we are coming to this new initiative, which is called Walloon Initiative for Circular Materials, Win4C, which is 2 years old now, more or less, that has been labeled by the Walloon government, that aim to turn Wallonia into the circular materials valley of Europe for technological materials, mainly for ICT, energy, construction, and mobility, which is a very high ambition, but it's by having high ambitions that you can have great results, I think. So this is the ambition that we have in Walloon region. And how to deal with that? We have 3 strategies, mainly critical mass, to try to reconnect people from private and public sectors that are active, or at least that want to be active in the circular economy from different value chain and sectors. And today we are more than 80 organizations that are trying to join the efforts. Innovation, of course, because it's an innovation initiative. The idea is to create a collaborative innovation platforms related to any kind of topics related to circular economy, such as characterization, eco-design, sorting, and so on, in between research, technical organization and universities. And the idea is really to have these platforms that try to address big topics that concern mainly people who want to be active in circular economy, and that with the results that we can obtain to try to spread circular economy as much as we can. And today we have already 3 funded collaborative platforms. And then last one is international influence. So we want to support and promote companies in setting up innovation projects at European level. And especially on that part, we are co-organizing with a competitiveness polls, the Circular Wallonia Days that you should have heard of. So it will occur tomorrow and the 14th for the Walloon partners, and it will be mainly dedicated to what we can do as collaborative partners in specific fields of circular economy for batteries. Sorry, I forgot to switch in the room. So there will be keynotes, but one big thing is that there will be also workshops where participants will work, actually, will try to work and to try to make some collaborative work about how to make disassembly smarter, second life, active materials recycling, because circular economy is not only a matter of recycling, it's trying to be as long as possible on the market before being into the recycling loop, but also massification, which is a specific need, we think, for battery ecosystem. And there will be also networking and stands that will be done during this event. And if not yet registered, you are still all very welcome to this event. And if you want more information, here as well, you have a QR code, you have an email address, and feel free to contact us if you want more information about the initiative. Thank you very much. If there is any question from the room or online, and if you can switch on the sound.
So there is a question. So from Eduardo Pereira that is asking, do you use plasma gasification process?
Sorry, I'm looking to the question.
It's
do you
in the
use
chat.
plasma gasification process. We have plasma processes that we can use for pyrometallurgical processes for the recycling. I don't know if it answers to the question. If not, you can contact me directly. Of course, that we can answer to that question. Your mic is off, Mariana.
Okay, I'm sorry. So since we don't have any other question, we can move on to the next presentation. So next we have Takwa Benissa and Kunsulu Nurekeyeva. So Takwa Benissa is a founder of Solid4B Cluster and is the project manager for the SpinMate and Advantage projects at Avasta Battery and Energy Engineering, while Kunsulu is a solid-state battery and engineer at Avasta Battery and Energy Engineering, and also a technical coordinator for SpinMate and Advantage project. They will present today the Solid4B cluster, unveiling insights and lessons from collaborative clustering endeavors. The floor is yours.
You hear us?
Yes.
Yes. Good. Okay, great. Thank you so much. Welcome all. I am Takwa Benissa. I am the founder of the Solid4B cluster and the project manager of SpinMate and Advacem projects. Good evening, everyone.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. I know especially for the CPLJ participants, you've had a long day already. So thank you so much for being here. For participants who traveled from outside of Liège or from Liège, thank you for being here. For everybody online, we're very excited to be here today to discuss lithium solid-state batteries in the context of circular economy, a very, very important subject now, given the drive for electric vehicles and all the batteries that we'll have soon that we'll have to recycle. So thank you so much, Sarah, for inviting us, and we're excited to have a very nice session this afternoon. I hope you enjoy.
So for today's, as my colleague was saying, thank you so much for CRM, but as well, we need to thank our facilitators, which are Innova, specifically Katarina, Marco, and Mariana, but as well CRM Group, Lionel, and Adrien. Thank you so much. So for today, this agenda, we made it based on some recommendations from our audience in the previous webinar. So today we will discuss solid-state lithium metal batteries towards circular economy. So as we started with a welcoming session from Lionel, so from our side, we will introduce the cluster. We will talk a bit more about what we are doing in the cluster, what is the plan behind launching these clustering activities. And then we are proud to have as well a representative from BEPA, Bozorg. Thank you for being a part of this. And then we will discuss all some subjects which are recommended by our audience, like the recycling, sustainability, and eco-design aspects for lithium metal batteries. And we will close our panel, our event, with a nice panel moderated by Bozorg with the most known people in the battery field. So before going in depth in this event, so we will try to give you some overview and perspectives about the Solid4B cluster, our mission, and the key objectives. So let me try to turn. Yes. Okay. So for this cluster, actually, we have under this umbrella 8 European projects from Horizon Europe and Horizon 2020, from different calls, LCBAT 19, 03, and 05. So I will take this chance as well to welcome Sionic project. We have here some representatives. So they recently joined our cluster. So mainly, our target behind this clustering activity is to multiply the impact of each project, providing better collaboration and networking, and providing management across associated projects to structure a good knowledge sharing and as well a benchmarking of the project's outcomes.
Right, and I'll take this opportunity to discuss more about the technical scope of our cluster. It's a group of 8 very ambitious projects. If you thought European projects are already ambitious, this is very, very ambitious because it's next generation batteries. So it's mostly generation 4 and 5. As you know, now there's a big drive for increasing the energy density, which translated to a car gets us rid of range anxiety. So now the research is really moving to high capacity materials and solid state electrolytes. Lithium metal is very high capacity anode, very tricky to work with. So under our umbrella, we have 8 projects and lithium metal based solid state batteries. And the unique thing about our cluster is that it is so very niche and technically focused. So with and because of that, we think there's actually a lot of potential for the technical synergies because it's sort of like very niche and everybody is trying to do the same thing. So we have hidden with self-healing methods. We have solid with roll-to-roll pulse laser deposition. We have spin mate with pulse vapor deposition. Adrien uses the same and then also uses magnetron spattering for the protective layers. We have solvent-free extrusion production of lithium metal and sionic. Anode-free battery where lithium metal is produced electrochemically and AM4 BOD. Post line with roll-to-roll PLD as well. And seatbelt, which is present here today, where lithium metal is produced via extrusion, lamination, stacking. So we're very lucky to sort of have so many projects under our umbrella already. And we expect as the drive for the next generation solid state batteries continues, we expect more calls that are focused on these generation 4 and 5 solid state batteries, as well as calls focused specifically on lithium metal manufacturing. So we expect to grow quite a bit in the next few years. And yeah, so for, we try to, could you go back?
Yes.
We try to really sort of have a very clear goal because sometimes if you have a cluster of 8 projects, you kind of, it's easy to sort of like spread and not have a very defined focus. So we try to keep it very, very in line with the KPIs from the European Commission. So what you can see here is the excerpts from some of the from the 3 calls that are part of the Solid for B cluster. And these are sort of the goals that we see that are so very broad, and these are the ones and that are so also big that you cannot achieve within one 4-year project with 13 partners. So these are sort of exactly the KPIs that we hope to reach by having a cluster, by, for example, European battery value chain towards cell production in Europe should be strengthened completely, of course. And it's not so easy to put that on just one project. So we're hoping to bring the 8 projects together and really from the lithium metal solid state batteries try to drive that and try to really create this competence for Europe to secure that battery value chain, to really innovate in that space and not lose that effort. So that's our big goal for our cluster. And while we do have a very set vision and goals, we also think it's very good to always sort of like, even though we're still young, to reassess how are we doing? Are the partners in our cluster happy? Are we achieving what we're trying to achieve? And
yes, and here it comes the questionnaire that we shared with our cluster partners. So I'm pretty sure people from Seatbelt project, they received this questionnaire. Thank you for filling it out. So we are trying through this questionnaire to evaluate the impact of the cluster of the Solid 4B cluster, and as well it will be a room for us for improvement. So as you can see here, we asked about the motivation, why those 8 projects decided to be a part of the Solid 4B cluster. Mainly the responses was the technical synergies, the networking, and the visibility. But as well, we had really relevant statistics, which more than 75% of people who replied those questions think that the clustering activity is so beneficial for their studies and as well for their organization, which is exactly the goal of behind our clustering activities. As well, based on this questionnaire, we are trying to address our activities in a way to reply the needs of our partners, which are specifically scientific exploitation, commercial and social exploitation as well.
So it was very nice to see sort of like that the motivation for why people want to join the cluster aligns so well with the goals of why we want to have a cluster. So that was good to see. It means we're going in the right direction. But we also, of course, wanted to see more about the challenges of being in a cluster. And we asked, are there any specific challenges or barriers to effective collaboration and knowledge exchange? In order to have data that we could analyze, we, of course, suggested a few answers. So it's confidentiality, lack of commitment, and inter-project communication. You can see that confidentiality scored the highest, which then kind of anticipating that answer, we also asked if there's confidentiality agreement between the projects put in place, what would you be willing to share? And actually, if you look at the responses, that the thing that partners want to share the most is the routine best practices. So it's not sort of like the technological breakthroughs or the deliverables or the models or results. What there is really a need for is really just the routine best practices, things that worked and things that didn't work, things that maybe you don't highlight in a deliverable, but things that are sort of like belong to this tacit knowledge that is so kind of non-transferable, because that's not something you think about when you know, it's your experience and your knowledge that you don't really think of putting on paper. So I think that was very interesting to see, because I mean, that's exactly what drives innovation. That's what makes experiments work. That's what makes it happen. So yeah, it was very nice for us to collect this data. And if you go to the next.
Yes. So here we will just share with you, because we are still a young, like a cluster, but we have a good success story that we are really proud of it. So here in the upcoming section, we will try to illustrate our previous experience, but as well we will give the solid 4B insights and the future direction and collaborative opportunities. So officially, we started the Solid 4B cluster on March 2023. So means it was just 7 months before. So our first webinar took place on the 26th of June. And this webinar was in the lithium metal anode production from different aspects, from different projects. And for this webinar, we reached a number of 100 to 150 participants with an overall rating of 4.5. So as you can see there in the chart, so the percentage of the new information was between 50 and 75%. So means that we are already building or having impact on the audience by making them learn some new information about lithium production. As well, we asked for some suggestions, and I guess our event today is the good showcase that we are trying to reply the audience needs. Regarding the insights, so from the very beginning, we knew that with a huge number of projects involved in the Solid 4B cluster, it was really important for us to create an effective communication tool. Means that we already created a dedicated Teams environment where we stored all the data related to the Solid 4B cluster, but as well, we created an official channel for communication. Also, having clear objectives and alignment were essential. So from the very first beginning meetings, we agreed with the partners to have a clear roadmap, a clear roadmap for this cluster, which means that there are opportunities for follow-up projects, networking, and fostering collaborations between beyond European projects. Also, it was crucial to have an effective management. So we tried to split roles among the partners very clearly. As well, we created the graphical identity for the cluster, but as well a clear technical focus.
It's very important for us, as you could see through our questionnaire, to be very open to feedback and also to really involve different stakeholders. I think European projects are just such an excellent opportunity to really get people from different industries, from different sort of like backgrounds, academia, industry, to talk to each other. And then to also talk to BEPA and policymakers. So this is something that we really want to kind of like better and to create more dialogue and create more conversation. So this is also why we're really hoping to grow the cluster and make it a more sort of like independent body that will live on beyond the project's lifetimes. And another thing we're really striving towards is to foster collaboration and share best practices, to find ways that we can really share technical knowledge and really strengthen those technical synergies that are so valuable to our participants under this topic. So we're hoping to participate in more events and conferences as a cluster, have sort of like more regular activities, have newsletters, just to have more presence and connect people more. And we already have plans for our next event. It will be as part of the SpinMay GA. So the idea is to have an event that is centered around scaling up high energy density solid state batteries. For me personally, SpinMay and Adrien both focus on upscaling. And for those two projects, we're coming to a place in the project where the transfer from lab to pilot will happen. So I think the idea is to really have 3 different sections, to have lab that's focused on material design towards upscaling. So what is it that we have to consider on the very like material level, keeping upscaling in mind. The second one is focusing on the pilot line. So really manufacturing equipment, modifications to the equipment, processing, upscaling. So really very sort of like technical from the equipment side, and also engineering from the more material science side. And the third one is to focus on beyond. What happens when you are ready to go to market? What happens in mass production? Is it profitable? And really to discuss sort of like to place the batteries that we're working so hard on making in the context of, you know, the world ecosystem, and to see is that feasible and do you make money? So that's the plan for April. We're hoping to have it on April 15th in Brussels. Please come to the workshop. You're more than welcome to participate. We hope to see some of you there, and maybe some of you as even speakers. So
we are also planning to release our first newsletter on March 2024. So this newsletter will boost for sure the visibility of the 8 projects involved there. But the idea behind launching this newsletter will be mainly to give updates about our activities under the umbrella of the Solid 4P cluster, but as well to discuss if some to share some news about some milestones reached by our projects, but as well technical updates on lithium metal solid state batteries. I think this is something that can catch the attention of all the battery experts. As well, we are thinking about launching a YouTube channel where we will put everything related to the Solid 4B and the projects involved there, which means that project videos will be published there, training peers, webinar events, etc.
And as I mentioned before, we're hoping to expand in the upcoming months and years, and to include projects that are focused on lithium metal manufacturing. We're hoping to sort of like keep the technical focus for the technical synergy aspect of it, but also maybe to involve more, you know, topics like today, circular economy, which is so relevant and for batteries, of course. So those are our plans. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you so much. There are our contacts if you want to connect with us, but as well, this is our contact for the Solid 4B cluster, the official LinkedIn channel. Thank you, and have a good rest of the following session. For sure, it will be so interesting. Thank you so much, Mariana.
Thank you so much. And if you have any questions.
Yes.
And they online, of course, as well.
By the way, we have 90 online, so if...
For the moment, so I think we have... please use the Q&A to ask for questions. Yeah, no, we don't have any question for the moment. So I think we can move on to the next presentation. So next, we will have Bozorg Khanbael. Is the police officer of BEPA Batteries European Partnership Association, and today he will have a presentation entitled "A Closer Look at Battery Research Priorities in Europe, BAT4EU." Thank you. You can have the stage now.
Yeah, thank you so much. Sorry, I think there's an echo.
I think it's okay.
It's okay now? Okay. Hope you can hear me.
Yes, it's working.
Yeah. Let me just... Sorry. Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to the cluster Solid 4B team. Really exciting to see the developments and what's going on with this kind of a synergical approach to making the projects closer and making them basically do better, investing and the shared experience that is going on there. And we really need that at the European level. We are really looking forward to see how this pans out in the upcoming years. So with that, I want to talk to you about the BAT4EU partnerships, strategic research and innovation agenda, the latest development on that document, and what is it about, what's going to happen in the next years within the Horizon Europe work program, and also other basically instruments of investing and research and innovation within the European battery ecosystem. So quick words about BAT4EU partnership and BEPA, if you don't know us. So the BAT4EU partnership is basically a co-program partnership between the European Commission as the representative of the public body of this partnership. There is a private side to that private side is represented by the BEPA, acronym for the Batteries European Partnership Association. So we are a huge cluster of actors in the battery scene in Europe. We have almost 230 members coming from industry, research, and associations. Majority of our members are industry members, 50 to 60%. We have RTOs composing almost 30 to 40% of our members, and the rest are associate members. So what we do is basically the Horizon Europe work program has been invested by the European Commission for almost 100 billion. 1% of that goes to the battery specifically for the this period of 10 years from 2021 to 2027, and the latest projects will be actually continued up until 2030. So how that money should be invested, on what topics, and how it can be basically incrementally improved technologically and also contributing to the growth of the battery sector in the Europe. That comes from our association proposals coming from our members and basically provided to the European Commission. That's the main thing that we do. What comes actually with that is just making sure that from the European perspective, from the competitiveness of the Europe and other objectives that are embedded in the European industrial policies and general policies such as circularity and sustainability, everything has been checked. And also there is an even growth provided for the member states to get into this very, very challenging and competitive industry. So we have instruments for that, but one of our main instruments is our strategic research and innovation agenda. So what is that basically is within this very, very large set of needs, especially for European battery basically ecosystem, which is new to the game. As you know, we are somehow starting from the scratch, or we have started from the scratch since last decade. So that's a huge body of needs and requirements to be worked on from the innovation perspective, also from the industrial perspective. But what are the most important ones? What are the most urgent ones? What are the ones that contribute to the circular economy and also the sustainability? So it's our task to define them with the help of our members, with the consultation with our members. And that would be basically crystallized in the strategic research and innovation agenda, which is a document that we update every 2 or 3 years. The latest version is finalized. It will be published early next year. So we hope that is a very comprehensive guideline for not even the Commission, not even the legislative body, but also for the industry and research institutes to make sure that what they are tackling are in line with the perceived future of the ecosystem, at least at the short and mid-term, and also, of course, for the long term. So this document is the main guideline for us. But what we do every year or every other 2 years is to provide the objectives, and again, basically taking the juice of the SORIA into the work program of the Horizon Europe. So that is basically the topics that should be invested on. We label them with a budget, with the goal of the TRL, with the scope, with the target, the specific targets and KPIs for the projects to be tackled. And that will be a start next year, early next year, for the work program of 2025. So if you're a BEPA member already, please reach out. We are going to this challenging phase of picking the topics and talking about them, really getting into what is needed and what should be continued, or what should be started, or what should be cut off. So that's very interesting. And please reach out to us if you're a member to participate in that effort. But how we actually do that is our working group. So this is our basically the main engine of intellective within the BEPA. We have 6 working groups. Working group 1, new and emerging battery technologies. So this is an overarching group of experts. So who are in the working group? Let me start from that. Every BEPA member introduces some experts for each working group, depending on their expertise. And we have once a month a meeting, or once every 2 months. And depending on the document, or depending on the topic, or what is the most basically the immediate task, we get to that. We get this round of consultation with them, and we get the most popular opinion to be the case for the agenda. So working group 1 is actually is somehow auditing the whole working groups to make sure that we are not just sticking to what is the next, that we are just having a look at the further steps that should be taken. So what is about the long-term vision, the chemistries that are promising, but yet at the low TRL level. So that's within the scope of the working group 1 activities. We have working group 2 on raw materials and recycling. So very much embedded with the circular economy objectives, and to make sure that, as you know better, there is a huge issue with the raw materials to be sourced within Europe, or to have a reliable source from outside. There is a whole body of policies coming to make sure that there is a reliable, basically, sourcing for the batteries, especially lithium-ion battery, especially the incumbent dominant technologies, but also upcoming technologies. Working group 3 on advanced materials, so very known to you. So the materials that get into the cells, and also to the step of the cells being produced at the pilot level. We have cell design and manufacturing working group. Is pretty self-explanatory, but there must be a very, very good synergy between this working group and others. And we have two working groups on applications, one for mobility and one for stationary, tackling the questions of integration. So this is as overlooked as it is very crucial getting to the second half of the Horizon Europe, or again, this evolution of the battery industry, to make sure that what we perceive as a battery is not itself, it's its performance in the application. We need the application, we need the car or the source of the energy source to work well. So that integration is super crucial. So we want to make sure that the information is also clear on that way. So this SERIA is just not born out of thin air. It's the last step of many steps of the consultation. So our working group is also integrated with another European initiatives called Batteries Europe, which is a project itself has its own deliverable in clarifying the scene in other respects for the European Commission about the roadmap. I get to that in detail more, but other reporting methodologies, key performance indicators, very important metric that we use within the public decision making, and also other kind of deliverables and projects that they're tackling. So to make sure that we are not wasting a lot of time, our working groups and Batteries Europe are integrated to some extent. So the very primary pool of information comes from what we developed within this working group as a European battery roadmap. So this is a bit kind of a relaxed version of the SERIA, which includes almost everything that we need to do. So very clear on the main goals and anything that comes with that. We use the information and knowledge from other initiatives. I don't know, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the Battery 2030 Plus initiative, which tackles what is the next step, what is that should be seen but is a bit overlooked now in the long-term vision. So the consolidation of all this information gets to the European Batteries Roadmap within the BEPA working groups. So from now on, it's more about the BEPA working groups, which take that roadmap a bit, refine that into the most important topics, most immediate topics to be tackled, and again, assign a level of urgency to them. That's it. And then the next step, the organic next step is the Horizon Europe work program drafting. So again, we get to those narrowed down area, and then we narrow it more down to what is the projects that should be funded. This is a endeavor of 1 year or so. So you can join from any point, but you have to make sure that the information are coming. There are a set of information coming after, and there are information that will be result of those process. So let's get to the SERIA. I want to just give you an update of what's inside. So the SERIA is divided by 7 areas. So raw materials, advanced materials, design, manufacturing, just like working groups, mobility and stationary application, and 1 area for the recycling. So what the other 2 areas that are there to make sure that this ecosystem is just organically improving, and we are a part of one of the approaches to make sure that the decision making is not from I'd say top to bottom, but bottom up, is to make sure that we are making an ecosystem that is self-producing. So we have actually a lot of coordination projects. So there's a part on the coordination to make sure that is happening organically, and we have transversal topics. So what I forgot to tell you is that in addition to this working group, we have several task forces on sustainability, on safety, on hybridization and standardization, social sciences and humanities. So these task forces are basically in the SERIA within their own topics, but they're basically monitoring everything that goes on. And if anything is overlooked, we want to, and doesn't fit within those kind of a very specific segments of the value chain, we make sure that it's not missed. To give you an example, the LCA topics, the battery passport projects are a product of these topics coming from our task forces. So very, very crucial, and we just have a full-time monitoring and that nothing is missed from the very important overarching criteria. So we have this 9 chapters for each part of the value chain, and 2 chapters for transversal topics and coordinations. So what has changed that we need to update that? So I'm going to take you through the journey of what the result of the Syria. Where does that come from? What has been the argument? So the discussions that we have within the working groups or with the European Commission between 2021 and now, that has shaped our Syria. Just give you some examples of some very clear examples of that. So from the legislative point of view and political point of view, we had the batteries regulation. So that's clear that we need technologies to make that happen. There are a lot of aspects to that. There are a lot of parts to that. The battery passport, the recycling targets. So everything that is there is some kind of goals that are addressable at the moment, but there are some that are not. To give you a very rough example, the lithium recovery percentage in the recycling content or recycling goals or recycling content. So these are not really tribal. So we have to make sure that there are projects that are working on that from now on. A big set of acts and legislations and also initiatives that after the invasion of Ukraine and also the need of the European continent to really focus on the batteries, in a sense that it's a strategic development and it's a strategic, basically, need for having its own industrial policies developed, get us to a big list and long list of legislations. So Repower EU Fit for 55 package, targeting the emissions by 2030, reduction of 55%, and then 2 new ones familiar to the battery community: Critical Raw Materials Act and Net Zero Industry Act. So I don't get into those, but there are basically the tools coming from the public side to make sure that the materials are there, materials are accessible. If there is a big industry with terawatt hours of production, the materials will not be an influential hiccup. They are at the moment. We should be clear about that, but in the long term, that can be addressed. And then the move of the industrialization should be a stop, at least in the battery sector. So how start from, as I mentioned, somehow from the scratch, is supported by the public side, is supported by a meaningful instruments. So it comes from the Net Zero Industry Act with some objectives. I leave you with the exact numbers for now. The other initiatives and framework is safe and sustainable by design. So this is primarily targeted the chemical part to make sure that developments in that sector are initiated with that thought at the innovation sector. So we have it in the Syria. We have topics for that. One of our topics is to make sure that this is not a vague title for batteries. There's a clear definition of that technically, and there are projects that will define for us what are the main goals that should be removed there. So PFAS ban, so that's another crucial problem. There are a lot of negotiations with the Commission to make sure that it's not going to be a huge stop for the battery industry. And if there is an alternative to be developed, that development of that alternative has been looked at a bit rational in terms of the timing. And the last one is the EU Court of Auditors review of the battery sector. So this is the EU Court of Auditors is actually this external audit sector of the European Commission that monitors how the Commission is spending its money and in Europe. So they had a very critical and complementing kind of a report on the spending in the battery sector for the innovation part. There were some points about the dead weight, about the basically the lack of synergies between the public body and the projects itself. So that notes taken has been embedded in the SRIA and noted there. From the market point of view, I'd be sure quick because you're all familiar with these dynamics, the spike in the price of raw materials, the 80,000, I think, dollars per ton of lithium prices. So that shocks are really crucial to make sure that the diversification of chemistries are there, has been perceived to be in the agenda, but again, to make sure that also timing to get there is rational. So we are observing this huge demand in energy storage, stationary energy storage. So regardless of the basically the magnitude relative to the basically global magnitude of storage, this sector is improving. It has its own needs. It has own requirements to be mature in Europe, and again to getting to the high percentage and ambitious goals of the European Union to get to the variable renewable energy adoption, we must make sure that this sector is also in the agenda. And then gigafactories coming online, a lot of issues with that, coming from the raw material part, the scraps, the manufacturing, the equipment, the supply chain there. So pretty evident, and the IRA and the general competitiveness. So the Inflation Reduction Act, this huge public support from the federal government of the United States for the battery sector, very clear and very basically incentivizing. So that has affected the competitiveness of battery manufacturing in Europe. So to make sure that that's noted in terms of competitiveness, we are really targeting the cost. We are making sure that if we want to have a huge light-duty electric vehicle fleet, the cost is set and the cost is competitive and considered. So and the breakthroughs in technology. So LFP is getting somehow a momentum back, especially embedded with solid state, etc. The sodium ion and the semi-solid state batteries. So this kind of a transition move that some companies are making in terms of taking the semi-solid state instead of full solid state technology. So the organizational development, as I mentioned, we have these working groups joint with together.
Just to let you know that you have 2 minutes, I think.
It's 2 minutes or
yeah, because there is time for questions.
Okay, sorry. So I think that's enough because I'm talking to the solid state batteries audience, so I don't need to get into the details of how we are perceiving the solid state in this area. The general needs are dispersed all around the area, but the specific focus on the solid state in the area are in 3 main parts: material development, manufacturing, and recycling. So what we did before in the material development, so a lot of your projects are coming from this topic, so I don't need to elaborate on that, but previously for the material development, we had almost 34 million with 4 projects developed for the solid state batteries. Sorry, I think it's manufactured. Yeah. I knew it was more than that, so it's 48 million. So it's a huge, actually, chunk of the money so far spent on solid state material development, as you know, and no pressure. But this has been one of our main technologies to tackle since the initiation of the partnership on Horizon Europe. What is in the Syria is to make sure that there is not a knowledge gap there. So the conventional batteries will be tackled for A with the silicon graphite, and then for B and for C lithium metal, and also full solid state and high voltage cathode are perceived to be in the agenda. So to make sure that the electrolytes are not imposing further issues for the raw materials sourcing. The recyclability and ease of manufacturing, of course. The co-development is really more announced in this area. So to make sure that what is getting to be in the cell are already set, are already tried to be developed bit together. So the TRL 6 and 7 really imply that we are not developing material in isolation. And then exploring the new low-cost materials also there. So for the manufacturing, the main point is to make sure that the difference is basically we are able to minimize the difference in the manufacturing on incumbent generation 3 and liquid electrolyte and later. So the progress in the manufacturing and making sure that this cost is lowered is the case. Also, what we have really emphasized in this area is the flexibility. So we can talk about it in details if you like to, but the flexible lines is very important in the new area. And the digital twins are also perceived to be a goal there. And the last one on recycling. So this is very important for us. We want to start it right away. We have already started from some projects. So Xavier is going to tell us about the details of that. But the criticality of raw materials, the list of the materials that we are at the very heart of the importance of the sourcing sector. You have to make sure that the materials that are coming from solid state, germaniums, I don't know, or from sulfidic electrolytes or oxidic electrolytes, they are also considered in the long term to be important, and also the recycling processes as the time goes by and we get to the huge stock of the basically economically feasible recycling of solid state are the technologies that when we get there. That's it. Thank you so much. Sorry, I tried to be on time, but
yeah, close to be on time.
Yeah.
I just got here the
Thank
mic.
you,
If there is
Lionel.
any question online, we open here.
So for the moment, no question. We are 96 here. Do we have any question for Lionel? So I think if we don't have any question, we can move to the next presentation. Thank you so much, Lionel.
Just it seems that there is a question online actually.
Okay. Okay.
In the room, sorry.
Right.
So we'll repeat the question. Yeah.
By design and work with PMs for the mobile application because they tend to have their own ideas about how to design a pack, which is easy to work with or to manufacture for them, but which typically makes it extremely difficult to dismantle and recycle. And the type of packs that are much more compact are like very specific.
Yeah. So sorry, is it echo or
No, there is no echo.
Okay.
If you can just summarize quickly the question.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's a challenge. That's a challenge. So from the public side, from the Bat for You partnership side, we are making sure that at least at the first stage of the development, that's considered. If the companies do that, I mean, we have a certain degree of influence to what the companies do. But the thing is, if we can get to a technology that is making sure that the cost leverage is there, I mean, the only way out of that is the innovation, and the only out of the way that the companies can be basically accept that that's not the best approach to glue everything together is to make sure that the alternative is cheap enough for them. So it depends on the economic factors of the cost of the raw materials, etc. But from the design point of view, it is in this area. It is trying to make sure that the design is seen from the first stage to be recyclable, and the cost tools also are there. Thank you.
There is another question in the room, yes?
There is also one online.
In the previous presentation, there was a little bit of information regarding solid state lithium metal anodes, and the bottleneck for that is lithium metal.
Yeah.
How do you process? Are there any interest into developing or supporting efforts that go along the lines of new metal to make lithium metal? Lithium metal is traditionally produced by using a technique that is really environmental non-friendly material. So is there any funding or activities and raw material production?
Yes, our raw materials working group, and I just emphasized, just basically focused on the parts that are naming the solid state more. But of course, raw material is a very important part. The refining is very important part of the Syria. Actually, the community, we have other cluster or other partnerships that are specifically, so we are not about extraction, that's out of our scope, but whatever comes after extraction, that if I'm not wrong, you're referring to, I don't know, direct lithium extraction kind of technologies that really are efficient in terms of the cost and the footprints. But those are in our Syria. We have projects that are working on that, especially also on the anode side, not necessarily lithium. But yeah, the refining is very, very one of core of our objectives there.
Okay, so there is also online question that we will read out loud here. Within your R&D strategy, do you also consider double layer capacitors?
And do we? No, not as specifically. I don't know what exactly do you mean by double layer capacitors, but we have so anything. So we have somehow divided our chemistries into more mature kind of chemistries and the chemistries that are not really that are low. I mean, at the moment they have a low TRL, and they are specified in the Syria based on the goals that needed. Not, we are trying to avoid naming chemistries, at least the ones that are not really mature. But for the solid state lithium ion or sodium ion, we are specific targets to tackle.
And I think that there is the last question that was, so the workshop on April will be mainly discussion about how we can upscale the already designed solid state batteries to pilot plant scale.
I think the question is for...
Yeah, I think it was a question for you before. If you want to answer, just come back here, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bozorg. Sorry. So here are the question.
So the workshop will be mainly discussion about strategy design. Yes, and also it will not be so specific to really look into how to upscale the ones already designed. It will also be focused a lot on what do we have to do from the very beginning on material level to make sure that we can upscale in the end at all. So I think the idea is to sort of have different people from very lab perspective and very pilot and very much beyond perspective to talk to each other and exchange their perspectives on what is important for them and what is important in the end for upscaling. So no, it will probably contain a little bit about the solid state batteries that are already done within the projects on how to upscale those specific ones, just to, you know, also take the advantage of the fact that we do have solid state batteries that will be ready for upscaling in that time frame. But I think the idea is to also keep it much more generic, so it can be very useful for everybody who will be attending. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Once again, sorry for those who cannot hear the question here in the room, but I think that we'll be able to fix it during the next coffee break. Mariana, so I think that we move to the next presentation.
Yes, we will move to the next presenter. So we'll
I
have
hear you,
Xavier.
but I guess...
Yes,
okay.
We will. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So yeah, next we will give the floor to Xavier Mayorga. He's a chemical engineer at Avasta Battery and Energy Engineering, and he will talk about recycling challenges for the next generation solid-state batteries. So Xavier, the floor is yours.
Perfect. Okay. Switch. Okay, perfect. Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. As they mentioned, I'm a chemical engineer working in the recycling unit of ABEE. And today I will talk about the recycling of solid-state batteries and also about the recycling activities that we have in these 3 projects that are part of this cluster, which are Pulse Lion, Adrien, and Speedmate. think you cannot see the next slide. Yeah. Yeah, so I will start by giving a general overview about.
Sorry, if you can speak louder because they cannot hear.
Yeah.
In the back of the room, they cannot hear.
I will try. I will try some. So I will start by giving a general overview about available recycling technologies for, let's say, conventional lithium-ion batteries. Then I will talk about the adaptability of these technologies for solid-state batteries. And then I will give some details about the recycling activities that we have in these projects that I mentioned. So why is the recycling of lithium-ion batteries important? I included these three main reasons, but we can find some more. The first one is waste reduction. There are two kinds of waste coming from the battery industry. One is the production scrap, which is the waste that is generated during the production of the batteries. And the other one is the end-of-life batteries. So the only way to avoid the landfill of this waste is by providing recycling technologies. Then the second reason is to reinforce the battery supply chain by using this waste as a source, as a secondary source of raw materials for the production of the batteries. And finally, to reduce the environmental impact of the battery sustainable by reducing the virgin raw materials used for the production of the batteries, and also by providing a sustainable solution to the waste that is generated. So regarding the first point, the waste generation, I included here some graphs to give a perspective about the battery waste that we are expecting in the coming years and why recycling is important. So in this graph, you can see the global battery demand. You can see that right now, the global battery demand is around 1,000 gigawatt hours. And this number will be multiplied by 5 in the next 10 years. So this increase in the global battery demand will result in a huge generation of waste. And as I mentioned, we have these two battery waste, the production scrap and the end-of-life batteries. And in both of them, we will see a huge increase in the coming years. And this increase will be especially significant for the end-of-life batteries. Actually, you will see that right now we don't have much end-of-life batteries available for recycling, but the number will be multiplied by 12 in the coming 10 years. So yeah, currently the main battery waste available for recycling is the scrap, but as I mentioned, it will change in the coming years. So considering this, it makes sense that in the battery regulation, we find specific targets for recycling. So there are three categories in the battery regulation that are related to recycling. The first one is the overall recycling yield. So by 2026, the target is to have an overall recycling yield of at least 65% and 70% by 2031. Then there are also targets for the recovery of specific materials, which are the lithium, the cobalt, the nickel, and the copper. So the target by 2028 is recovery of at least 50% of the lithium and 90% of the cobalt, nickel, and copper. And then by 2032, 80% of lithium recovery and 95% of the rest of materials. And finally, there is also one target related to the content of recycled material in the new batteries. So by 2031, the target is to have at least 6% of recycled nickel in the new batteries and 16% of recycled cobalt. And then by 2036, the lithium is also included. So the target is to have at least 12% of recycled lithium in the new batteries, 15% nickel, and 20% cobalt. But as they mentioned, we will have this discussion panel later. about the battery regulation, so we'll have time to learn a bit more about this. So now regarding the recycling technologies, when you read about battery recycling, you might have seen that people talk about 3 different possibilities for the recycling of lithium-ion batteries: the hydrometallurgical process, pyrometallurgical process, and direct recycling. But when we talk about recycling at industrial scale, we have to distinguish between the pre-processing and the post-treatment. So in the pre-processing, you can find basically mechanical processes, physical separations, and pyrometallurgical processes. And then the post-treatment is based on a hydrometallurgical process where you have a chemical separation and selective recovery. So depending on how you combine these pre-processing techniques and the post-treatment, you can have different recycling routes. So I would say these are the main recycling routes at industrial scale right now. The first one is mechanical pre-processing and hydrometallurgical post-treatment. So in the mechanical pre-processing, there is a shredding, start with shredding of the batteries and their inner atmosphere. After this, there is a drying step for the collection of the liquid electrolytes, and then the physical separation of the shred materials. So from the shred material, the fraction with the smallest particle size below 100 micrometers contains the anode active material and the cathode active material, and it's what's in the recycling industry we call the black mass. So the black mass is black powder that contains the graphite and the cathode materials, and it can be separated from the rest of the shred materials by particle size, by sieving. After this, this black mass goes to the post-treatment, to the hydrometallurgical process. And in the hydrometallurgical process, there is one first step, which is the leaching. So in the leaching, the valuable metals from the black mass, from the solid matrix, are extracted into a liquid phase, into a liquid solution. And then from this liquid solution, we can selectively recover the target metals. There are different techniques for the selective recovery, like solvent extraction or selective precipitation. But at the end of the process, if you are recycling, for instance, NMC, at the end you will have the salts of the metal. So you will have nickel sulfate, cobalt sulfate, lithium carbonate, and so on. And you can use these materials to produce new cathode materials. Then we have the pyrometallurgical process plus hydrometallurgical process. So in the pyrometallurgical process, the batteries are smelted, and it results in 2 different streams. One alloy that contains all the valuable metals, and the slag that contains the lithium. So then in the hydrometallurgical process, you can recover the valuable metals from the alloy and the lithium from the slag. The good thing about this process is that you can have pure materials at the end, because you don't have the cross-contamination that you have in the mechanical pre-processing. But the main problem is that you also lose some materials because you burn all the organics during the smelting. So you cannot recover the liquid electrolyte, for instance. And now the third possibility, which is also very common, is a combination of mechanical pre-processing and pyrometallurgical process before the hydro process. So before or after the mechanical pre-processing, you can have a thermal process, a pyrolysis, to purify your material before going to the hydrometallurgical process. So these are basically the available technologies for recycling lithium-ion batteries at industrial scale. Now, I mentioned before that there is one alternative approach, which is the direct recycling. So in the direct recycling, instead of breaking down the cathode structure to the individual metal precursors, the idea is to heal the cathode material as such. So you can see in this picture that you have your spent cathode material at the beginning with some lithium deficiency. So you can compensate this lithium deficiency and maintaining the crystalline structure. So at the end of your process, you will have again the cathode material with no need for the synthesis of the CAM again. This approach is very interesting for batteries containing low valuable materials like the LFP, for instance, because it might not be economically worthy to break down the LFP structure to recover the lithium and the iron phosphate because they are very cheap. So this approach is very interesting. But the main limitation is that to be able to apply the direct recycling, you need to have a very pure cathode material as entry material. And this is not possible if you have a mechanical pre-processing because you will have cross-contamination. So right now, the only way to obtain a pure cathode material to be repaired is by disassembly to the electrode level. And this is only possible manually because right now it's not possible to do the automotive disassembly of the cells to the electrode level because there is a huge variety of cell configurations, modulus configurations, and so on. So that's why this technique is currently limited to the lab scale. Next slide. Yeah. So for solid-state batteries, as you may know, the main difference of the solid-state batteries is that we have a solid electrolyte. We don't have liquid electrolyte. And this is important because the liquid electrolyte is composed of organic solvents or carbonate solvents with lithium conductive salt. And these solvents are toxic and are very flammable. So by having a solid electrolyte, you reduce the possibilities of fires or thermal runaways. So in that sense, the solid-state batteries are safer. There are different types of solid-state electrolytes: oxide-based, polymer-based, sulfide-based, or combination of some of them. Then, as they mentioned, one of the most common anode materials used in solid-state batteries is the lithium metal. And this is the anode that we have in the projects that we are working on, the 3 projects. And then for the cathode, we can find similar chemistries than the ones we have in the current lithium-ion batteries. So as I mentioned, the solid-state batteries are safer than current batteries in terms of thermal stability and potential fires, but still we have some elements that we have to take into account if we want to design a safe recycling process. So the first one is the lithium metal. The lithium metal is a very reactive compound. It reacts exothermically with water, so it means that it generates heat during the reaction. And also it produces hydrogen gas, and the hydrogen gas is very flammable. And if it's concentrated and you have some temperature, it can react with the oxygen from the air, and you can have a fire or an explosion. So if you are dealing with huge amounts of lithium metal, you have to take this into account. And the other material is the sulfide-based material, in case you have a sulfide-based electrolyte. The sulfide electrolyte also reacts with water, producing the hydrogen sulfide. And the hydrogen sulfide is a very toxic compound. We can see in the next slide. In this table, you can see the amount of hydrogen sulfide that is generated by exposing different kind of sulfide-based electrolyte to moisture just for a few seconds or a few minutes. You can see you can have up to 2 million ppm of hydrogen sulfide, and the permissible exposure limit for the hydrogen sulfide is just 20 ppm. So this is also something that we need to take into account. Now, what are the challenges or limitations of conventional recycling processes when dealing with the next generation solid-state batteries? So first, for the mechanical process, as I have explained, we have some elements that are reactive in the solid-state batteries. So we need to control the atmosphere of our mechanical process. In conventional processes, the shredding is done under inert atmosphere of nitrogen, but the nitrogen is also reactive with lithium metal. So you have to ensure that you have a dry and inert atmosphere for your material. Then for the separation after the mechanical process, as I explained before, in current lithium-ion batteries, you can separate the different fractions after the shredding with some physical separation. But in this case, the lithium metal is very adhesive, so you might need some chemical separation apart from the physical separation. That's something we will see later. And yeah, then regarding the pyrometallurgical process, the main problem of this process with the solid-state batteries is that some materials will get trapped in the slag, like the sulfite and oxide electrolytes, and also the lithium metal, and it would be very difficult to recover this from the slag. Also, some materials would be lost, like the organic materials, because you burn them during the pyrometallurgical process, and also you would have a generation of toxic gases like sulfurous gases, organic gas. Regarding the hydrometallurgical process, I mentioned that in solid-state batteries you can find similar chemistries in the cathode than the ones we find in the current batteries. But still, we have to take into account that we have the lithium metal and we can have sulfate-based electrolyte. So you need to consider this when designing your hydrometallurgical process to see which kind of aqueous solutions you will use in the leaching and how it can interact with these materials. So in these three projects, Adrien, SpinMate, and Pulse Lion, we are working on the recycling task of the projects. We have different chemistries in the electrolyte of the three projects. In Adrien, we have oxide sulfide electrolyte. In SpinMate, we have polymer electrolyte, and in Pulse Lion, we have sulfide electrolyte. In the three of them, we have the lithium metal as anode. And well, the research activities that we have in these projects are related to the conversion of the lithium metal, the recovery of the electrolyte by the solution precipitation approaches, the downstream process for the recovery of the cathode materials, and then recommendations for the cell design and the upscaling of the recycling. So for the lithium metal, what we are going to study in these projects is the conversion of the lithium metal into another compound which is more stable and also soluble in water, which is the lithium carbonate. So we will have this process that is called carbonation. And by doing this, at the end, we will have a material which is, as I said, more stable than the lithium metal, and that is soluble in water. And it means that we can use water as leaching agent to recover it and further precipitate. There are different possibilities to do this. We will try thermal process with a CO2 atmosphere. We will also try supercritical CO2. And you can also try to do this shredding under a CO2 atmosphere. So there are many things that we will try here. Then regarding the electrolyte, we have different type of electrolytes, but the recovery will be based on the dissolution of the electrolyte on a suitable solvent, and then the recovery by precipitation or crystallization. And in the case of sulfite electrolyte, we will also study the healing of the electrolyte structure after the recovery. And for the cathode material, we will apply conventional hydrometallurgical process. But what will be interesting here will be to see how the previous processes will affect the recovery of the capped materials. So we will try these techniques on the individual cell components at the beginning of the experimental task of these projects. And once we do the validation at the lab, we will try the techniques on shredded material or on simulated shredded materials by combining all the cell components together. So what we can conclude from this presentation is that conventional recycling approaches need to be adapted for next generation batteries. Also that eco-design is crucial to facilitate recycling. So as they mentioned before from the audience, I think it's important to consider recycling when designing new batteries. And also that new recycling techniques need to be developed for solid-state batteries materials. And that's what we will try in these projects. So that's all. I hope it was an interesting presentation. And if you have any questions now, I will try to answer.
We have at least 3 questions.
Thank you very much. I will have first a look if there is some question that I will read out loud on the Q&A session, and then we will move to the question in the room, if it's okay for you, Mariana.
Yes, we have 3 questions, as you can see. I can read them. So the first one, as a cell manufacturer, is there any requirements regarding the recyclability of the cell? Meaning, should the cell manufacturers develop their own process for recycling or prove that their cell is a percentage of the recycled?
Yeah, let me read the question again, sorry.
So I read out loud once again for the room here. As a cell manufacturer, is there any requirements regarding the recyclability of the cell? Meaning, should the cell manufacturers develop their own process for recycling or prove that their cell is at least a given percentage recycled?
Yes, so as a cell manufacturer, you have to make sure that your cell is recyclable. I think it's important to have interaction between, as I said at the end of the presentation, between cell manufacturers and recyclers. Also in the battery regulation, I think it said that the cell manufacturers has to make sure that the batteries will be recycled at the end of their use. But I think the cell manufacturer doesn't have to design a recycling process. I think it should be more an interactive communication between recyclers and manufacturers. And that will be one of the outcomes of these projects, to give recommendations to the cell manufacturer on how to make the batteries more recyclable. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but
maybe I can read the second question, which was, can we use carbon-based as electrolytes in solid-state batteries?
Yeah, well, I don't think I can answer that question because it's more about the cell design, if we can use carbon-based electrolytes. I don't know if Kunsulu might answer that, because I think it's not related to the recycling itself.
So the answer is, sure, it could be. It really depends. Sorry. And the last question was, what happened to the solid electrolyte during the recycling process? Is it part of the black mass?
Yes. So if we have a mechanical pre-processing for the production of black mass, and we don't apply any thermal process, the electrolyte will be there. So something that we will try, but we need to validate this first in the lab, is to have a washing step to wash this black mass to recover the electrolyte from the shredded material. But yeah, as I mentioned before, the black mass, we call black mass when you only have the the anode material and the cathode material. So I don't know if we can call that black mass. It would be shredded material, but yeah, it will be there in the after the mechanical process.
Okay, I think that there is no more question in the Q&A.
There is one more, sorry. Yes, I just added.
Maybe only one, maybe. Does it make sense to collect
Exactly.
lithium metal cells to make lithium carbonate when we will spend energy to make lithium metal again? Don't speak about the generated Cl2 if still from LiCl. Thank you. I don't know if you have a...
It makes sense to collect. So I guess they are asking if it makes sense to convert the lithium metal into lithium carbonate. Yeah, ideally, the best way would be to recover the lithium metal as lithium metal to be used again in batteries. It will to close the loop. But it's, as I said, it's difficult to handle the lithium metal, especially in a recycling process where you have a very destructive technologies. So that's why we'll study this carbonation process to have lithium carbonate at the end. But that's something that we would have also thought about, how can we recover the lithium metal as lithium metal? But yeah, we will study that during the project. Maybe in future cluster events we can talk more about that. We have some results.
Okay, so what I can suggest is that we are running a bit late, unfortunately, and for people attending on site, if you have questions, maybe take benefit of the coffee break to ask the question to the presenters. During the short coffee break, we will try to fix the sound issue because here we have a sound issue. But maybe Mariana, I can let you the floor right now.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, for those attending on site, please keep the timing for us to keep everything running smoothly. So we will have a coffee break now, and we will get back at 3:15. So thank you and see you in a bit.
So people are coming back. I don't know who is the next speaker.
Is Luis Oliveira. He is presenting online.
Okay, so perfect. We can start back. Perfect.
Okay, so now we can give the floor to Luis Oliveira. He will present a sustainable solid-state batteries, a cornerstone for bringing Europe future. So Luis Oliveira is a researcher coordinator at INEGI, and his work focuses on additive manufacturing technology. So Luis, the floor is yours. Please take control of the presentation and you can go. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to all. I hope the coffee break was refreshing. And I'm here to tell you a little bit about the work that we have been doing in SpinMate and a little bit about solid-state batteries, of course, and how can we help, well, make them become a cornerstone for Europe's future of mobility. Yeah, here we are. I'm sorry. I hope everybody's hearing me okay. I don't know. From this side, I was hearing you okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. And the slides are also changing, right? So everything is perfect. So just to introduce a little bit about myself, I'm a research coordinator here at INEGI. I coordinate the team for additive manufacturing and also until recently the team that was dealing with the sustainability work, especially in the battery field, not only limited to the batteries, but to quite a few other fields. My background is actually on electromechanical engineering and more specifically a PhD at VUB with the batteries always in mind and being used as a case study. So it's been a while that I've been dealing with this topic, so it's not a strange thing to me. So starting, we know that the demand for capacity in terms of battery systems has been growing, and the forecasts say that it's gonna rise drastically. So we're talking about hundreds and thousands of gigawatts yearly. So we can expect that all the technological processes can and will keep up to meet this demand, because we know that in terms of mobility, we are moving towards a decarbonization of the powertrains, trying to ditch the old ones based on fossil fuels and trying to focus on the new ones based on either renewable energy or with synthetic fuels or electromobility. And with that, I mean battery systems. The Commission has been recently doing many efforts with many strategy and action plans. We had recently the European Green Deal, the Paris Climate Agreement, the new batteries regulation and the batteries directive that everybody has been eagerly awaiting for quite a few years, at least an update. And going along with that and always building up to a more interesting value chain for the batteries with the CRM Act, Eco Design Directive, and the Net Zero Industry Act. Of course, all these are policies, and we have policy enforcement. And with that, I mean, we need to take into account that in order to execute these policies, we need to create the conditions. And in a certain way, the Commission is doing with these innovation programs and with all these projects that have been financed within the batteries domain. They are trying to push the technology from really low TRLs to high TRLs. Of course, that's we have been doing, because in a more technical aspect, we have been dealing with conventional lithium-ion batteries, and we know that they have limitations, of course, being safety, which is a very important one. The limits on the energy density, which is also a limiting factor that hinders many buyers from acquiring a new vehicle, an electric vehicle. But there are some opportunities here, and especially for its solid-state electrolyte battery system. They will provide fast charging capabilities, safety, and higher volumetric density. So until now, we know that with pilot lines, they have been not very, let's say, cost effective, but we are in the process of the upscaling and all the technology building blocks that will make this a reliable technology in products in the market soon. And the biggest challenge that sums up, how can we increase the TRL and scale up these production opportunities for a viable product? And when I mean viable, it means viable from an economic, an environmental, and a social perspective. All these three domains, of course, are the cornerstones of sustainability, but in terms of viability as a product, they need to be present all the time. Within the scope of SpinMate, and yes, here we are, we aim to develop a solid-state battery pilot line, Gen 4, of course, which we can scale, which is sustainable, safe, and really cost-effective. And in what tools do we leverage here? I'm just seeing if, okay, everybody's seeing the slides changing. Okay, perfect. And what we leverage here, Internet of Things, IoT, industrial IoT, machine learning algorithms, AI, digital twins, digital shadows, models where we have hardware in the loop, where we have models in the loop, and so on and so on. With that, we try to assess the economic viability of different options along the pilot line setup. And of course, the environmental sustainability of the full production process. And here we go from the extraction of the raw materials, from the recycling processes that are included in the full loop. And with this trial and error and the easy way of getting digital data, we try to iterate as often as possible to provide results to benchmark the new solutions. It's a new way of doing eco-design. Try, test, see if it works. If it doesn't, go back to the drawing board and iterate and iterate and iterate. Within the SpeedMate project also, the pilot line will have a capacity which is limited. It's a pilot line, of course, 16 megawatt hour a year with test protocols for the validation of the manufactured cells. We have different KPIs, mostly focused on a 10 ampere hour Gen 4 SSB cells, and they are related to energy densities, number of cycles, and a very important KPI, the low cost configuration for the systems. We aim to achieve less than 75 euros per kilowatt hour, and we do believe that the added value of these packs will meet this reduced cost. We have been seeing in the more recent years, the last, let's say, 2 years, a decrease in costs, in the average cost of kilowatt hour for produced packs. And we hope that this number continues to decrease to foster the competitiveness of the electric vehicles that will accommodate these battery systems. Well, we know that in the beginning, as with any technology, it will not be easy in terms of cost, because all the newcomers and the new early adopters will have to, well, take the upfront costs a little bit harder. But we expect that in the medium run and the long run, the costs will eventually, well, decrease to these levels. I think at this moment, we can see costs for Gen 3 lithium-ion packs with roughly 139 euros per kilowatt hour of pack capacity, which is already very interesting and very different from what we had, let's say, 4 years ago. Starkly different. And of course, for us to measure the how to benchmark and to measure all the KPIs that we have been talking about in the last few minutes, of course, we need to think from a life cycle perspective, in a full system perspective, not trying to not leave anything meaningful out, but always trying to bring anything that has an impact, either negative or positive, from different stakeholders, of course, to the calculations and to the models that we produce. With that, we use the basis of the life cycle assessment that follow the ISO 14040 and /44, and we analyze from the extraction to the end of life treatment, not skimming or skipping any product stage at all. So we define the goal and scope of the studies that we do. Then we produce the life cycle inventories, and I will talk a little bit into more detail. Oops, sorry. In a few minutes. But here we managed to create something which is very, very agile, which allows us to shorten the time that we go from getting inventory data to producing results. Of course, then we have the reporting stage and the interpretation of those results. But in the end, that's where the juice is. And that's where the big knowledge comes from the interpretation of the results that we see from the impact assessments. For this, we will focus, of course, also in the economical dimension, obviously. And also we will use with LCC, and we'd also use material flow cost accounting. Because these two methodologies, they relate different aspects, because they analyze different things and they provide the different dimensions that we have to characterize the issues that we have in hands. For that, we created a sustainability framework. We go from the concept creation, we define the technical specifications and see if they're in compliance. If not, then we go back again. Then we define the life cycle assessment per se. We see if we have improvement opportunities, and then if yes, then we iterate the full process again. We rinse and repeat, we rinse and repeat. So normally we also can conduct social life cycle assessment, but that's actually beyond what we are doing here in SpinMade. We tried always, and I mean always, use primary data provided by the experts. And from the nature of the projects where we are involved, and most of you are also involved, we know that we have many competences that are highly disaggregated. We bring competence from the ceramic side, we bring competences from the digitalization side, for example, and we're in the middle. So we conduct the assessments, we produce the inventories with the collected data, but in the end, those are the experts on those specific fields. And with that, we created a life cycle inventory methodology, which is powered by Sundial. And here I can spend a little bit time talking a little bit of Sundial. So as I said, we know that the core of an LCA or of impact assessment is truly the model itself, which is based on the inventory. And with the limitations that we have, trying to bridge many different domains here and different expertises, we try to externalize to the partners who know the most about those processes the ownership of that data, and alongside with that, all the responsibility of providing the data to Sundial. Sundial is a digital platform that aggregates this data and allows us to produce the models. So in the end, we extract almost ready-made models. And I have to say that Sundial is in continuous evolution. And we're also bringing some AI to the table to trying to create matchmaking between inventories and tentative processes. So it's still a work in progress. And it's going to be a trigger that will definitely allow us to accelerate the result provision. So because then later we only have to conduct the impact assessment, extract the results, and do the interpretation of those results. Here we can see in a little bit more graphical approach what we do with Sundial. You see that little block there where we created the communication tools alongside with data security, because we're in the process of being certified in ISO 27001, which is fundamental for the to showcase that we follow the best practices in terms of data keeping and safeguarding that data. Because as you can understand, the nature of the typical partners, and I see a lot of known faces in the audience that participate in these projects, is the safety of the data that they provide. So we take that really seriously. And as an example, we don't use any clouds or whatsoever. We use local infrastructure, and we have the full control of the hardware that we use. So we try to be as most independent as possible from external providers to have the platform in a running condition. Concerning SpinMade, the manufacturing line and the pilot line that we are assessing, of course, it follows the, I'm going to say traditional, but not so traditional approach, because we have new concepts for the cutting and also for the cell assembly. So we try to model all the environmental aspects and the cost aspects of all the different solutions that we are assessing here in SpinMate, from a lab level to the pilot line, and then trying to scale up how would an industrial environment behave from a cost perspective and also from an environmental perspective, of course, for the production of the solid state batteries. Of course, as on almost any LCA that we do, we do a benchmark versus something else, and it's about comparing with the current state of the art lithium-ion battery technology. Some preliminary results, but from the state of the art, because only now we are starting really to undergo with the development of SpinMate, because we are in the process of implementing these tools and starting with the development early stages of the project. Sorry, something happened here. Okay. We were able to identify that the production of the cell itself is the most dominant stage here that influences the impacts of the full production of a pack. We have always the packaging also and the BMS, but we see that we have much lesser impactful elements, such as the cooling system and also the electricity that is used. Of course, we know that there are many opportunities here to improve this, and we see this from a relative perspective, not absolute values, otherwise we couldn't be comparing them. But it really provides us the dimension on what's here to improve, and it's definitely the cell manufacturing. Also, as we mentioned before, and with relation to the costs, we aim to see them decreasing, and as we have been seeing in recent literature, of course, we are at the moment at 139 euros per kilowatt hour at pack level. So we still aim to reduce that amount to 75 euros per kilowatt hour of cells. So all the relative proportions will be dealt with, and we hope to achieve those KPIs by the end of the project. So within almost 4 years, 3.5 years, let's say. At this moment, of course, these results are based on the state-of-the-art analysis, and because we aim to get the results, well, as soon as we have the first outputs from the development work packages from the project. And I believe that this is a common thing about the full pack of projects that started less than a year ago. From the state-of-the-art, the current one, well, a good thing is to make the results comparable. We use the 1 kilowatt hour functional units, and the system boundaries are traditionally cradle to grave. Of course, we could have different approaches for cradle to cradle and from a much more circular perspective, but I believe that, of course, I believe that for comparability's sake, it's a good approach to keep it as the state of the art is assessing. The main impact categories that we normally choose are the ones that have at mid-level a little bit more dominance. And of course, traditionally, we find them to be climate change, acidification, eutrophication, resource depletion, and human toxicity, quite important, well, very. But nevertheless, we have to take into account one thing. As long as the materials are contained within a product and we know about the traceability of that product, it's important because they are not directly impacting. So we always have to bear in mind that this is a key thing. So we're not talking about landfills. We're not talking about anything like that. We're talking about a product life cycle management approach to batteries. So we want to close the loop. We want to keep the materials within the European borders, economical borders. So we know that we can control all these negative impacts and we can create good economical outcomes. Well, but moving forward, as we saw before, we know that the battery cell has the highest environmental impacts and also the highest economical costs. And specifically there for the battery system or the cell itself, we know that anode has the highest environmental impacts due to the current collector, of course. And we're also counting at pack level, the cell assembly and the active materials. Well, we know that we still have the problems of dealing with cobalt and also significant amounts of nickel, which have quite high burden life cycles. As a final remark, we know that the fourth generation of solid state batteries, fourth generation of lithium-ion batteries, will bring well, a new dawn, let's say, for electric mobility. Although we know that in the early stages of having this technology in the market, it will not reach all of the vehicles, all of the applications, but eventually technology will mature even more and the costs will be even further reduced. So the competitiveness with traditional fossil-based powertrains will have to increase, and ones will have to be replaced by the others by force, literally because of force of the facts and the truth that these powertrains will be much more efficient. Another point is related to the innovation in the manufacturing. We see many initiatives European-wide related to the need to upscale technologies, take them from the lab and bring them to the shop floor, and to try to create conditions that we have companies that not only can provide the equipment, but can also support with the technology for more players coming to the field. And that's why with the creativity, the ingenuity, and the willpower that we have in these projects, which is beautiful, that we can try to make this a reality and make a very good, well, conditions, let's put it like this, for electric mobility to move forward as such with solid state batteries. And of course, I would like to thank my project Speedmate for the opportunity and the chance to showcase the results that we have until now. And I believe that we are open to questions.
Yes, thank you, Luis. So
Thank you very
in
much.
the Q&A tab, you have already 2 questions.
Okay.
Do you want me to read them? Do you prefer to read them and then reply? It's up to you.
I will start from the first one.
Okay.
What is the expected LCA performance of solid-state batteries versus liquid electrolyte lithium NMC batteries? Will it be better, worse, or similar? Well, the life cycle assessment performance, we have to make the assessment comparable. In the past, we had many people trying to compare apples to oranges when talking about electric vehicles are worse than internal combustion vehicles, and they were just skipping many parts of the studies. From a cradle to gate, and I mean from the extraction to the factory gate with a ready-made pack, we can expect the performance in terms of life cycle, at least environmentally wise, to be, well, better for solid state batteries. But we cannot talk just about the environment. We have to see the sustainability has the triangle, and where in the middle you have the ones who give the same attention to the environmental conditions and to the economic conditions and also to the social aspects. But of course, if we shift that triangle to one of the corners, depends on the stakeholder. But we can expect really for solid state batteries to be to behave much better than traditional liquid electrolyte NMC batteries. Even inside NMC, which were the focus of my PhD, we have different ratios of materials which provide different characteristics to the cells. So even there, we have different nuances that we have to take into account. So it's better to lay out the conditions for what should be the scope of the LCA than just to say better or worse. It's, for example, they could be much worse. Imagine that they would be much worse than the traditional generation 3 battery systems. Would that be a problem? Not at all, because we're talking about cradle to gate. If the benefits from the use stage and also the end of life completely outweigh those impacts from that initial stage, then in the end, we have the full life cycle. Well, it's much more beneficial, let's say, to use than the traditional generation 3 cells. Of course, and we also have the safety aspect that brings another KPI, interesting KPI to the table, of course. I hope I answered adequately, but
sorry, you have just one other question, but we are on time. Maybe a quick reply, 1 minute.
Of course.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Do you assume that the cost per kilowatt hour will decrease with emerging technologies, mainly solid-state batteries with all the complications in upscaling production? Of course, the cost will, well, let's put it like this. The cost can only decrease from this point onwards. Of course, if we start using more, if we continue to invest in new upscaling capacity and new technologies that are being used for the mass production of these battery systems, and we know that there are many challenges, for example, like producing the electrolytes, the solid-state electrolytes, lithium metal, and so on and so on. If we continue to invest there, then eventually we will have many more applications that will help the upscaling of the technologies and the solid-state battery as a product for other domains.
So thank you, Luis, for your presentation. And I think
pleasure.
now it's time to move on for our next guest.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So next, we will have presenting Massimo De Pieri. He is an energy and nuclear engineer working in life cycle engineering in the project Seatbelt. And today he will present the eco-design criteria for the next generation of batteries. So thank you, Massimo, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Both the people like live and people connected on the Teams. I will try to give you an outlook about these, let's say, eco-design parts. Just a quick introduction about what we're gonna hopefully discuss today is a little bit of the main framework. So much has been said so far also by other presenters, so I will try not to repeat too much. Then a quick introduction about what eco-design is. And to finish, probably, hopefully, the most interesting part is how this eco-design has been tackled into the Seatbelt project. So starting from the first point about the European sustainability, of course, I would just highlight here that Europe is let's say, releasing a lot of regulations and normative frameworks when we talk about battery and eco-design and also LCA as well. We can say that starting from 2006 with the first batteries directive, then we had an update in 2020. And now we just had a new release in July 2023 of the battery directive. That's just to say that, of course, it's out of the scope of today to go through these, I would say, complicated documents. So we better stay safe and just tell that what is the goal of this whole activity that is coming from, let's say, from the top. The content and the aim of these directives is to just, let's say, draw a roadmap about how to deal with sustainability into the battery domain. Because, of course, now batteries seems to be like a sort of silver bullet to solve climate change and decarbonize the mobility and whatsoever. In some ways it could be true, but of course we have to, when it comes to practical activities, we need to start from the top and then define a strategy in time. So strategic roadmap with like the broad idea. And then there are some KPIs which are, let's say, identified as relevant to measure the benefit of these implementations. So from the strategy, the directive is saying, okay, I want to go in this direction, and then I set some KPIs, which value I want to be this one, which for me, it means that we reached a condition, a market and technological condition in the battery, which I can mark and tag as sustainable. And then when it comes to KPIs, we all know, especially today with Seatbelt project, we discussed a lot about how to carry on tests, protocols, standard frameworks, and so on. So whenever KPIs are mentioned, methodologies are needed. So these directives as well are trying to harmonize what are the content and the methods to be used to assess the sustainability of the batteries and the target KPIs that are reported. And in the end, of course, as a final, let's say, the most practical part, the part which engineers usually like most is which tools to be used to measure these KPIs. So after the whole, let's say, the whole reasoning about the strategy and whatever, then how do we do the measurements? So these directives are also somehow reporting such kind of information. Going a little bit more into detail, for example, LCA that was mentioned in the previous talk is a typical example of a tool which is as well standardized by the ISOs and whatever, and it has its own, let's say, micro word inside. On the other side, eco design is more like a methodology, so it has a kind of broader scope and has to be, let's say, handled with some I wouldn't say care, but at least should be considered in a broader perspective. So let's go ahead with what eco design here is. Here you have like a kind of definition. I will not go through it, of course, but the idea is just that the bold parts are the ones that probably matters most. So the focus of the eco design is the environmental requirements and trying to embed these requirements into the design phase. So that's a kind of change of paradigm, we could say, from like a user-centered design or some other kind of design which highlights the functionalities. The eco design is more devoted to take into consideration the environmental requirements and the material and energy flows. So we could basically say that whenever we try to apply eco design, we automatically call for some LCAs to be run, because when we talk about energy and material resources needed in development and use phase, this is just what LCA is. It's just a mass and energy balances, and try to see this solution demands more energy, more material. What is the effect of depleting such kind of material or another one? So that's theoretically what eco design is. And here we have a sort of visualization, which is a little bit more practical, hopefully. Again, we won't go through this, let's say, whole framework, but we can see that in the end there are a lot of phases, and it's quite correlated to circular economy. So basically, probably in the ideal world where circular economy is the rule for the economic side, eco-design is the rule for the engineering and design phase. So of course, if we have a methodology which boosts the consideration of material and energy balances and boosts recyclability and whatever, of course, this is supposed to support circular economy. Then of course it's not that easy to to implement such kind of methodologies, because we can all imagine that typically the main driver is just the cost. So if before somebody was mentioning, for example, the modern battery packs, and these are not really designed to be disassembled, probably because there is a matter of process efficiency and product overall cost, which is the main constraint and the main, let's say, the main arrow we try to follow in terms of optimization. But when it comes to environmental footprint and recyclability, of course, these could experience a kind of let's say twist into the priorities. So let's go to the, let's say, central part of the presentation, which is about how the eco-design was implemented into the seatbelt project. Well, seatbelt is about designing a battery with, let's say, solid-state lithium metal and hybrid electrolyte. And in work package 1 of the seatbelt project, we have the whole sustainability, let's say, kit, which starts with task 1.1, which is about eco-design criteria that we will see later on into more details. And then, just to confirm what I was just saying before, we have sustainability assessments right after, because okay, we can try to suggest how to design the battery in an effective way, but then we have to demonstrate with quantifiable and measurable and standardized approaches and metrics whether these targets that we expected to achieve with the eco-design has been in fact achieved. And then, of course, we need to know what the cell performances and economic performances should be, because this is the starting point for applying the eco-design. And we have, of course, to meet some recycling and circularity targets, not only because of the circular economy as a, let's say, general topic, but also because of what was mentioned before in terms of European directives and thresholds that are starting being more and more popular in terms of real constraints into the design phase. And that leads to the last point, which is the compliance with the European safety and environmental regulations that are currently active at the moment the project is running. So how the eco-design has been implemented into the project. So first of all, we started, eco-design is not really like it's an hybrid technique, I would say. It's not just a matter of calculating material and energy flows. This is one part, and I would say is the easy part. But the qualitative part should not be underestimated neither, because first goal is to understand how the battery is going to be designed. And also now is like 2 days that the seatbelt consortium is meeting, and I can confirm you that it's not that easy to understand in practical terms which materials are finally going into this battery, what are the amounts, what are the associated production processes, efficiencies, and so on. It's a tricky topic, and so it's the first part to be addressed. So try to understand what are the main materials and components involved. Then we pass from like component experts, we pass to the manufacturer themselves. And here the idea is to understand how the battery pack is supposed to be designed, because again, we have tons of reasonings about cell materials in the end during these meetings, but then when, as was said before by Bozorg, I guess it's like in the end, the European Commission is interested in how the battery is performing when installed into an electric car. So we have to bear this in mind very clearly when we apply such kind of, let's say, broad evaluation frameworks, because we need to pass from the very specific component, which is the cell, to the mass of cells into the battery pack, into the car, which is driven by somebody in the European Union for a certain amount of kilometers. So we have to understand what could be a potential battery pack design. And then very important phase is the definition of the recycling efficiency, and based on what has been understood before, how much we can expect this battery to be in fact recyclable, which is kind of nice question to be answered, but of course it's we need to unlock the first two steps just to try to estimate what could be a reasonable also technology path to recycle this battery, because just before we saw that there are several recycling techniques. Each one has some pros and cons and some benefits and loads. So it's important to understand what could be the recycling path. And then we need to face the European regulation. So of course we need to match, let's say, that all the technological and engineering considerations and the regulatory framework, which is somehow not negotiable. So we need to. It's the engineering that needs to cope with these requirements. It's really hard to go the other way around. And of course, once we get to this step, we can as well try to establish and define what are the cell performances. So in order for this cell to become a battery which can be recycled according to the European regulatory framework, how this cell should perform. And in the end, all this package of activities is just condensing and let's say finding a kind of concrete concrete configuration into the eco design kit, which is also one of the deliverables of the project. So we want to go component by component and just try to say from the very beginning what are the best solutions in terms of eco design, taking into considerations a set of parameters, environmental. So here we go with the, let's say, a schematic view of the eco design framework in seatbelt. So basically, I will not go through the whole of it because it's basically we already introduced these specifications before, but into the step number 6, so the eco design guidelines, is where we identified some actual eco design drivers. So here we have like 10 points, which are all trying to address some of the dimensions of the eco design methodology. So as you can see, we have a lot of recalls for example, durability and disassembly, which are really important drivers, because disassembly is really important when we think about the recycling at the end of life. Because it seems to be trivial, but it's not easy to disassemble something which is hermetically sealed or with glues or like adhesives compared to screws, for example. So that could be a major driver. And as well, when we talk about durability, because in the previous presentation, it was mentioned about how the use phase could let's say overcome the impacts of the manufacturing and so on. And that's an example of how the use phase, the extended use phase, can also reduce the need for more batteries to replace the one which is going to be decommissioned, and let's say which performances are like decaying. So we have to also to be reminded both sides of the, let's say, of the system every time. And then we have a lot of other criteria which are furtherly documented into the eco-design kit. But the idea is just to give this multi-dimensional kit of ideas that could be interesting to follow and try to implement at least some of them. Then, of course, is the intersection between technological and, let's say, engineering feasibility and this eco-design that gives the final outcome. So what we could really do, because, of course, it would be really great to tell all the manufacturers, okay, just follow all the eco-design guidelines, minimize as much as you can the environmental footprint, increase as much as you can recyclability. Well, okay. If this would be the case, the problem would be already solved. So of course, it's not that easy, and we need to match a lot of constraints together. But at least it's good to have such kind of supporting kits that are maybe useful, and maybe for some technical people are not also that obvious that some solution could really contribute to lower the environmental impact. I remember in like another European project that people was just saying people into the technical field, like testing the cells and producing the cell prototypes. They were just saying, well, environmental sustainability has never been one of the priorities. And it's like, okay, so for them, it could be useful to say that if you put some different solutions or you choose one material in terms on another, you could lower the environmental footprint. Why not? Okay, so here we just have a representation of the linkage between, on the left side, the European regulations, let's say. So all these points are coming from the battery directive. And on the right, we have some ideas of how this is, let's say, corresponding to some KPIs into the seatbelt project, passing through some specific KPIs. So it's just a way to see how all these, let's say, the requirements from the directive and the practical KPIs that can be defined are all correlated. And I mean, some KPIs may be an effect on multiple set of regulations and, let's say, recommendations. Because, of course, on the left side, we are super general, and on the right side, we are super specific. So in the end, there is some mix between the two levels. And here is just an example of what the outcome of the eco-design in seatbelt is. So as you can see in this table, we have like some eco-design criteria on the left side, and then we defined what is the corresponding measure into the battery proposal. So basically, that's just another way to look at the figure before. And we have as well a description of the features and what an eco-design KPI could be. So here we can see, for example, that we divided into battery footprint KPIs, which is mostly about design solutions in terms of cell components. But then we have also some information and KPIs related to the overall system efficiency, which is as well, for example, related to how the components are mixed together and are behaving together. What's the role of the BMS into the battery management, as well as the easiness in recycling the component. And then, of course, another important cluster is all the results related to for example, the cradle-to-cradle supply chain. So supply chain plays also a really key role in ensuring that the materials that we selected, first of all, are available, and then are available with a certain level of security in terms of the value chain, in terms of also the origin of these materials, and also that these materials are have the features that we need. So we have to ensure that if we tell manufacturers, well, okay, you can use I don't know, recycled lithium metal. Well, okay, but we have to make sure that there is a certain supply chain for the recycled lithium metal in Europe, and if this technology is really going to break through, Europe is really able to supply such kind of material, and this material is able to be processed into the current technologies and the current production lines into the existing factories of batteries. And here we have just another, let's say, extension of what we were saying before, but I will not go through it, but it's just important to notice that the idea is to have a correspondency between the general criteria, the European regulatory framework, and the project-specific KPIs. And then I think it's all right to leave the floor for some questions, because that's just the final remarks. This European framework is just increasing and pushing for sustainable batteries in the end, which means from the eco-design perspective, definitely we need to increase the recycling of batteries in order also to close the loop, as was saying before. And to do so, we can consider eco-design coupled with LCA as a nice tool to incorporate the environmental life cycle thinking into the battery design since the very beginning. All right, sorry.
If there are questions online,
doesn't seem like should be there.
There is one question on the Q&A.
From Wisdom, right? Do you assume that the cost per kilowatt hour will decrease with the emerging technologies?
No.
Oh, okay,
From,
sorry.
I mean, if the cell is going to the shredded classic recycling lines,
Okay.
Can you see that one?
Yeah.
If the cell is going to the shredder, classical recycling lines, then what is the point of improving the design for recyclabilities? This can help on a module level to facilitate dismantling for sure. So what is the advantage of cell design for recyclability? Well, yeah, maybe the I was not precise enough into the speech. Of course, when we talk about the cells, well, the important part is because you have to think about the waste as it is at the end of life. So it's not like a waste cell, but first of all is a waste car. And then after a certain amount of operation, this becomes a waste battery, which is a waste battery pack, which is a set of waste cells. Then, of course, if you want to throw all the cells together and shred, that's fine. That's probably the best way to pre-treat the cells to recycle. But the design for recyclability and for disassembly is improving the steps before. So passing from, let's say, the car battery, then, for example, removing the BMS, removing all the metal cases, aluminum case, and so on, cables, small electronic components, and so on, and then finally get to the cells. Then, of course, once you have the cells, you can just shred them as we already do, basically.
I think that there is another online question. If new pack design improves the energy density by 10% and is not eco-design, which one is supposed to be given priority?
Okay, that's a nice point, and that's why usually we couple these with LCA, because LCA is the tool that can quantify what's the environmental benefit of improving the energy density by 10%. And this is translating into probably a less amount of charge and discharge, or maybe less amount of energy used to run the same distance with the car. And so we should have like a cross check with the LCA results into of course, in the environmental dimension that we want to investigate. But yeah, the question is, it's a nice question, and of course I cannot answer now which one is supposed to be given priority. I would say it's also hard to have like an energy density improvement by 10% that denies completely the eco-design, because eco-design in the end is not really about the cell behavior, but more about like how the cell integrates together into the battery. So I would see these two items as somehow like could be present together. Otherwise, it depends on what LCA says, the answer to the question.
We have a last question. I think due to the time, for now we only have one more. But then I think it would be it, and then we change to the next presenter.
I'm just looking to the room here. If there
Okay,
is any
sorry.
question here, because we have people. Just if there is one question. It seems that everything was very clear here.
Okay, so you have one last one on the Q&A. I don't know if you can read it. Does it make sense to enforce?
Does it make sense to enforce policies for new pack designs to cut recyclability might decrease interest of investors compared to those countries who are not enforcing such strict regulations? Sorry, I have to read it again because it's kind of inception question. Does it make sense to enforce compared to those countries who are not enforcing? Well, I am very broad question. I would say that once, that's my opinion, but once, let's say, policies are starting boosting for some technology, for example, in this case, like recycled materials or recyclability, I would say investors, they will just sneeze the opportunity to make money and would just go on these technologies. So I don't see this as let's say a limit to the economic let's say competitiveness and overall health state of the market, because once you have interest, either it is like spontaneous or it is like induced. In this case, I would say that an induced interest of the investors into sustainable technologies would just lead to a benefit and a growth for that specific market segment.
Thank you, Massimo. So I think now is the time to move to the next presentation. So next we will have Maeva Philippot. She's currently leading the life cycle assessment team of MOBI Research Center, and today she will give a talk about sustainability aspects of anode-free solid-state battery made by 3D printing. So the floor is yours, Maeva.
Hello, thank you all here and online. Yes. So my topic today is the sustainability aspects of, in fact, I'm for a BAT project, so it's an anode-free solid-state battery made by 3D printing. I will start with our research group. So we are part of VUB, for University of Brussels, MOBI, which is an electromobility research center, and we are EVERGY. EVERGY stands for Electric Vehicles and Energy. We are an interdisciplinary team, and we are having techno-economic and social environmental skills and assess different energy systems and integration and optimizing also a design of energy systems, for instance. And my team, the LCA team, is dealing with sustainability assessment. So LCA, social LCA, prospective LCA of, let's say, emerging technologies in the energy sector. Mobility is part of it, and battery is, of course, part of it too. We are part of IM4BAT project, which develops an anode-free solid-state battery, which means that it doesn't have an anode. Yes, so no graphite, as most lithium metal anode batteries, but we don't have lithium metal anode either. We have a custom current collector that will enable stripping and plating of lithium ions, which will help to reach the energy density target. This battery will also be 3D printable. We will use photopolymerization to print and for additive manufacturing, which will help in reducing by 64% energy for manufacturing, which, as Louis presented, is quite relevant because, as you saw, it's quite relevant on an environmental point of view. And another advantage of IM for BAT is that we have a full sustainability assessment, not only the environmental assessment, but also social and economic point of view is also dealt with. So let's look at IM for BAT cell. So this is a, let's say, classical commercial generation 2, generation 3 cell with anode as graphite, with liquid electrolyte, and it contains not only critical raw materials, but what now the GRC and the European Commission says is strategic: graphite, copper, lithium, cobalt, manganese, and nickel. In the first corn cell that IM4BAT is developing, we will test hybrid solid electrolyte with an NMC 811, so removing the graphite out of it. Then we will have our second prototype, in which we remove, in fact, the lithium metal, and we will have this customized current collector made of copper, and different options are still here. We will then, in this single layer cell, test the optimized components. The final prototype will be a 3 amp-hour cell with this customized current collector, our hybrid solid electrolyte, and NMC 811 cathode. And in IM4BAT, we will not only tackle, as I said, environmental point of view, but the full sustainability. So in order to not to have burdenship from an environmental point of view to social impacts on different stakeholders. First, I will show you some results of what we are doing on the environmental assessment, because we started, little explanation of what is LCA, even though we already saw some presentation out of it. So LCA assesses different environmental impacts. So the most well-known and the one we hear about is climate change. But we also assess, for instance, impact on ozone layer depletion, because even though the ozone layer is recovering, in LCA we can still assess if we are using and emitting ozone-depleting substances. We also assess different air pollution impacts, so particulate matter or photochemical ozone formation, which has quite some impact on health, of human health, for instance. We also assess water use. So this little map that you can hear is a water stress index for different countries in the world. Then we have resource depletion, whether it's fossil or mineral, quite relevant for batteries. We also quite hear about a lot, for strategic and critical raw materials. We also have different water impacts, so eutrophication and acidification, for instance. Then we have impact on the biodiversity, which can be, for instance, ecotoxicity, and also land use, because different land and can stock carbon differently, and they of course have different land use, have different biodiversity impacts. So IM4BAT, we start with screening different materials and process alternatives with all the different impacts that I explained before. So here I will present the results for LLZO, so for our electrolyte, and for options that you can see below. The top two are LLZO with aluminium or tantalum, and both processed through solid state, and below still LLZO with aluminum and tantalum, but through co-precipitation process. And results are quite different. This is why LCA is really important, because with the same material, we can see that different process alternatives lead to completely different results. So here we can see that the solid state option is probably the best, using aluminum instead of tantalum can also be quite useful. However, in LCA we are using some databases, and now we are still having to confirm the results because we are still having to model some precursors for co-precipitation particularly. In most of the impact that I've shown, in fact, the lanthanum oxide was a main hotspot. And as I said, well, tantalum has a higher impact than aluminium or niobium. As LCA concerns life cycle, the next step will be to look at the full battery and the full life cycle. Yes. And as I think Xavier presented, we will also tackle recyclability. Here we have LLZO, which is quite a challenge for recycling because first it contains metals of interest that we would like to recycle, but LLZO being a ceramic can be harmful to crushing equipments. So the first step can be quite tricky. The safety consideration, I think that Xavier tackled them already. So I will just say that here we will look at the full hydrometallurgical process, and it will start, well, in 2024. Then our other focus is on social LCA, and I know the day was a bit long, but I will ask you to interact a bit and go to Menti. So for those online, you can also participate. I don't know how much connection you have in the room, but you can either scan the QR code or go to Menti and use the code above and tell me what you think when you hear the word social LCA and social life cycle assessment. We will see the results. So yeah, tell me, what does it ring a bell to you? What what you know already about it? I'm waiting for your answers.
Just open the, yeah.
Yeah.
Open a new. Yeah, you can go ahead.
I think that those that voted can see the results. Code.
It's not the same screen. Yeah.
Yes. Sorry for that. I'll just put. Okay.
I guess that you should have the result later.
Yeah, I will see the result. You won't. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, then I will comment it afterwards. But thank you for your your inputs. So now let's look at what we are doing in social LCA. Well, what is social LCA and what we are doing in AND for that. So, well, in environmental LCA, we have different impact categories. In social LCA, we have different stakeholders. So stakeholder groups, so workers, local community, society, value chain actors, and consumers most of the time. Of course, there are different methodologies. And for all these stakeholders, we have different subcategories. So the well-known child labor for workers, for which we have the indicator, child labor employment rate for boys, girls, and in total. And we have other indicators. And in and for that, as we are starting with a screening, we are starting from the first step of the supply chain, which is mining. So we look at different raw materials. And well, for each of them, we look at the market share of all the mining countries of this specific raw material. Then we have our stakeholders. I've put only two here, but we'll have 4. And for all of them, we have different indicators. And for each of indicators, we have different risk level from no risk in blue to very high risk. So we did this for nickel, manganese, cobalt, and copper. I will not look in detail in both results. The interactive results are accessible through this QR code, but roughly, what we can see is that cobalt, we hear a lot about it, of the social risk, and yes, well, it's confirmed in our assessment. However, well, other cathode active materials, such as nickel and manganese, have quite some risks depending on different countries they are coming from. And copper, which is also mined with cobalt, sometimes can have quite some risks. But mainly for nickel and manganese, we saw that Philippines is a country where, well, it can be mined, and there are different risks associated there because for environmental regulation may be low, and also because even though the Philippines, well, has quite some standards on for the workers, they are not really endorsed. Russia is also mining and treating nickel, and it leads to a lot of environmental impacts, which are well known, and also to different social risks because, well, Russia is an authoritarian country, and even if we leave the current war, it's one of the least peaceful countries in the world. But now let's look at two other materials that are of interest for lithium metal and solid state batteries, which is graphite, which is not present. But anyway, we will look at what, well, could we benefit from if we don't use graphite. So first, natural graphite mining is a quite concentrated market because almost 60% of natural graphite is mined in China, which is, as Russia, an authoritarian country, and which has quite some, well, human rights issues that you may have heard of on global and regional scales. Also, specifically to natural graphite mining and treating in China, there are dust emissions and, well, quite some pollution and impact on human health in some specific local areas. Also, what you can see for the value chain actors, well, the corruption is quite high in this country. The risk is very high. And also we have other impacts that are quite high. But an issue that we are facing in our assessment is that we are dealing with a lack of data for China because we don't have, for instance, value for child labor, which is probably not happening in mining. But anyway, there are some specific indicators for which we are having some issues. So this is the risks that you can find in natural graphite mining. While in lithium mining, the picture is quite different. First, also very concentrated markets, but the main mining country is Australia, very high human development, such as Chile, also very high human development, the second mining country, two different processes from two different origins. One is spodumene is mining, rock mining, and one is brine extraction. And okay, Australia, the main risk that we found for specifically mining in Australia is, well, issue with the local community and in fact, well, with indigenous. In Australia, they have quite some issues from specific sites. In Chile, even though it's a very high human development country, well, workers have quite some, well, they have rights, but for instance, the rate of, how do you call this? Anyway, the union density is quite low, and there is repression and, well, of strikes for miners, and corruption is also quite a hot topic. But anyway, the picture is a bit better than for natural graphite. So what we could see is that when we look at the cathode active materials, the mining, well, DRC, the Congo, well, and all that I think you've heard of, I will not repeat, is happening there is a hotspot for social SCA, and Philippines and Russia can be also a hotspot for cathode active materials. Avoiding graphite in the anode is a good point. For the social LCA and for the solid state battery, we should emphasize this. I only showed results for the mining. We did the same for the refining step. However, for all these materials, China is refining the majority, like more than 50% for almost all of them. So what I said about China in the risk is China is happening also in the refining step. And as for the environmental LCA, the social LCA tackles life cycle, so we'll look also to the full battery and the full life cycle. But what we can say is that when dealing with sustainability, we need to tackle the three dimensions, not only the environmental point of view, but also costs, which we talked about it already today, but also the social impacts. But there is no perfect material, for sure. However, LCA, as what mentioned before, can really help to identify the hotspots and the different options to go with. One of the main aspects of solid state batteries is that they have quite a high energy density, which is important for LCA because less material means also probably less impact. And what is not often mentioned is that to also have lower environmental and social impact, we should think of the battery size that we are including. Because of course, if I have a 100 kilowatt hour battery and I'm only driving 50 kilometers a day, it's over-dimensioned, and well, it's a lot of pollution that should be avoided from the start. So in eco design, probably the first step would be to look at the battery size and dimension it correctly. And I think that's my last slide. Well, I'm of course thanking for that project, and that's it for me. So if you have any question or remark, you can either contact me or ask them now. Where is Q&A?
Thank you.
Here.
Q&A, yeah, we have new posts here, and I think that you can take, starting from this one, does it make sense? Maybe if you can read it out loud.
I think it was already asked to Massimo.
Okay, sorry. So it's the next one.
Yes, sorry, for now we don't have any question.
Okay, so I will check the audience here. Maybe there is one question, because I have one, but I'll let the floor to... Is there any question? Actually, I have one. Really interesting. Thank you very much. Once we have done the social LCA, actually, we just emphasize that nothing is perfect indeed. And today, industries are pledging to integrate environmental externalities into, some regulation that we should have in Europe. How do you see the social aspects that should be also embedded in these externalities that we should consider while defining how to reach the market in Europe? Or because it's quite difficult actually to take it into account once you have already done the cost screening and then the environmental screening?
Well, if we look specifically at batteries, in the new battery passport upcoming, we will have some due diligence for specific materials. However, I think probably the most difficult point here is traceability. Because, for instance, if we specifically talk about Congo and cobalt, tracing exactly if it's coming from artisanal mining or industrial scale mining and large scale mining is very difficult because it's really very far from, well, the people that are putting the batteries on the market. So I think we are already having this in the, European regulation, the battery regulation and the battery passport, which we did not tackle today, but will come into place. And yeah, I think that here traceability is where we will face an issue.
And I have a second question. Do you see any, for some materials, maybe any correlation in between environmental burden and social burden, or it's really dependent, it's case by case, and you cannot have a main conclusion starting from environmental analysis to transpose to social one?
I would love to have it.
Okay, but there is no today. Actually.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, can you hear us online?
Yes.
Yes.
And can you see us as well?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So everything is working properly here. So you will see the moderator and the participants here. We can hear you, so that will be perfect. Maybe just before giving the mic to Bozorg, we received the result of the poll for social LCA. So the results, the main one was child labor, to answer to your question about social LCA. Labor acceptance, worker safety, freedom of speech, indigenous people, communities, corruption, and fair wage. So we have the result. Okay. I think that we are waiting for the last speakers. I give you the floor, actually, because you will be the moderator.
Thank you so much. So, yeah, Adrien is here. So, is Adrien? Yeah, we're very preferred. We are only two, yeah, of a side, so we can be close. Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to the presenters, and very, very insightful content. I mean, it was really, really, for me, interesting in a sense that we can see what the general ideas that usually comes from our side are being implemented and investigated. So we already have incited a lot of great questions. To answer a part of it related to the battery regulation, we have a very distinguished panel here with us and also online. So I start from with our guests online, Marja Vilkman. I don't know, Marja, can you hear us? Okay, great.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So Marja is a principal scientist at VTT in Finland, and also she's the chair of our working group in BEPA and Batteries Europe in at working group 2, raw materials and recycling. So she's very much in charge of the agendas that I was talking about. Next presenter online is Johan Blondelle. Johan is the policy officer at the European Commission. And from the Commission side, he's in charge of managing the Bat4EU partnership. So hello, Johan, if you can hear me. Then on side, we have Patrick van de Bosch. Patrick is the strategic advisor for green transformation at AGORIA. And we have Adrien Mery. Adrien is the electrochemistry research engineer at Ampere. So thank you very much for joining us. So our topic for discussion is the battery regulation. And by battery regulation, I mean battery regulation, because the word has been used interchangeably for a lot of other piece of legislations and acts. The Critical Raw Materials Act, the Net Zero Industry Act, the other incentives. But what we are talking about is the document that has been actually this year approved by the Commission to impose and actually regulate a lot of aspects of the usage and manufacturing of the batteries for different sizes, for different technologies. But we're gonna stick to some aspects of that to have the take from different perspectives on how to implement that, what's their vision on its basically efficiency, and so on. So for that, I start with Marja. So let's dive first just right into the science. So we are at the solid 4B clustering event. We are talking about the solid state, and I wanted to ask Marja about his take on from this point on. Is there to what extent the new chemistries, other than what's the incumbent generation 3, has been addressed in your point of view in the regulation. And if we want to really comply with the regulation for the new chemistries, for the emerging chemistries, specifically solid state, what are the technical challenges and what are the areas of research that we really should tackle from today? Please, Marja.
Yes, thank you, Bozorg. Yes, so I see in the new batteries regulation of some opportunities for the solid state batteries, but also some challenges and yet again also tools which will help with the possible challenges we might have with the regulations and the solid state batteries. So one of the main challenges which has been already discussed today is the recyclability of the batteries, since we have there the metallic lithium anode, and also some of the electrolytes might have some difficulties or safety issues in the recycling, like the sulfides that were today mentioned. So this is one of the main issues that needs to be tackled for the new chemistries. And yeah, we need to avoid that we would develop batteries that cannot be recycled at all, or then it won't be safe to recycle the batteries, or then it could be too expensive to recycle the batteries. So we need to think about the recyclability of the solid state batteries already from the design and this manufacturing development stage. So even though they will come into end of life 10 or 20 years from now, they will contain critical raw materials that we need to recycle, and that's why we need to think about those aspects already now when we are developing the materials and processes.
Yeah, thank you. Can I follow up with that? Like within the projects, I know that you're involved in the solid projects, but within the whole clustering of the solid state battery project, could you give us some examples of those technologies that really improve the sustainability part of the manufacturing, also the
Yes.
recycling?
Yeah, so that's one of the opportunities regarding solid state batteries. So the processing methods can be more sustainable than previously. And one of the good potential methods would be the dry extrusion coating, which can be used for making the electrodes for the solid state batteries. There we can avoid using any solvents at all in the best case, and we will reduce the carbon footprint of the manufacturing state significantly, since the drying of the solvent consumes a lot of energy, and also toxic solvents are used, like the N-methyl pyrrolidone in the production. So with the dry extrusion, we can avoid both of those things. And this is indeed developed in the solid project that I'm coordinating, but also, as you maybe remember from the first slides from today, also in other projects in this cluster. So that's one of the positive things regarding the emissions.
Okay, thank you. So that's it. That's I think a very good segue to ask Adrien about the new chemistries, and also the role of those chemistries when the mobility sector tackles basically adoption of those. So now we have a regulation in place. Now we have a need for compliance, but let's step back a little bit. Before that, when the mobility sector OEMs want to go to, for adoption of a chemistry, how do they look at kind of a futuristic compliance? So is it somehow in the thinking you think at the basically suitable degree for now, or you think that the dominant basically approach is the compliance after the regulation is in place? Can you repeat? So basically yeah, about the strategy, let's say two kinds of a strategy are usually perceived. One is that there's a regulation in place, so what we are manufacturing, what we are using for the car, is it basically possible to stick to the regulation with that technology? The other challenge is that when you are looking at the long vision for the company, are we taking into account the consideration of the recyclability or sustainability for future? So,
yeah. So first, it will be hard for me because okay, 2 years ago I was more in the academic area, and I joined industry so recently. So I will not be able to talk about the strategy before, but I can speak a bit about the strategy today. So as you may know now, via this European regulation on battery, OEM are subjected to the what we call EPR. It's extended producer responsibility. So basically, that means that the OEM is responsible of all he has inside the car, for example, included battery. So I would say the general recommendation for an OEM and yes, to be in agreement with this battery regulation will be to work as closer as possible with all the players of the battery value chain. And when I say all the players, I mean from material to cell maker and to module to the entire battery pack. So yes, the recommendation is quite simple. So be the closer as possible of all the value chain, battery value chain. But in fact, it's not so easy to do that, as you can imagine. So for example, if I take the example of LCA, so now the OEM need to declare, or soon they will need to declare the carbon footprint of the overall vehicle, so also of the battery pack. And so to do that, you need to have the more information as possible on the carbon footprint of all the battery components. And as you can imagine, and you can ask people working on LCA activity, it's not easy to gather all this data. But to fit with the battery regulation, you need, as an OEM, you need to do that. And for recycling, it's the same thing. As we saw during this afternoon, today it's maybe 50%, if I'm right, of the battery packs you need to recycle. In 2026, it will be 65%. You also need to recover a specific amount of each element, I would say, a specific amount of cobalt, of nickel, copper, and it will be evolutive with time with this regulation. So basically, for an OEM to do that, you need to work in close collaboration with recycler, with material maker, to see if their material or their technology is able to fit finally with this new regulation.
Yeah, thank you. So we talked about LCA a lot today. So let's talk about something that uses that and specific part of the regulation, and which is battery passport. So this is a very interesting tool, as you know, but it needs a lot of consideration, as you mentioned, as Adrien mentioned, from a lot of aspects, embedded into something informative for the public and also for the private sector itself. I want to ask Patrick, how do you see that? What are the challenges, and where are we with that technology?
I think the technology is easier. The backend is IT, blockchain, whatever you can imagine, and there are already battery passports existing. The Global Battery Alliances has published some pilots, I think last year. Quite interesting to look. And yes, the whole value chain has to collect quite a lot of data. Due diligence has to be in it, carbon footprint, recycled content, the state of health, the performance. So it's quite a lot of data. And the main challenge being on the one side, on the other side, the recycling targets, the collection targets, I'm not sure that the battery passport will help a lot there. It will help certainly in the chemistries, because we have now 4 chemistries, more or less, or 5. We will end up with 13 chemistries, which have all their recycling challenges. And with the battery passport, you can make a selection. But one major element in recycling is collection. And the collection target, it's 100% in the battery regulation. So not 50%, it's 100%. It all starts there. And as long as we don't link the battery passport with the car, with the inscription of the car, with the description of the car, we will never track where that battery will end up. You should know Europe exports 300,000 to 400,000 cars a year to Africa. At this stage, it's not electric cars, but in 5 to 10 years, it will be electric cars. How will the batteries there be managed at the end of life? And on top of that, once the battery is out of the car, shredded, you will lose everything. So it's clear the battery passport can be a tool, but we should wisely design it.
Okay, interesting. So everything is connected so far that we know. That connection is very complex, and it has a lot of aspects to that. But one part of that complexity is technological, and we need to find a solution to overcome, especially, as you mentioned, in terms of the recycling targets and contents. So, and as I presented myself, we have a lot of projects working on that, and we've foreseen a lot of projects working on that. Yeah, and all come under the BAT4U partnership. So I want to know about Johan's take as a representative of the BAT4U partnership from the Commission side. So how that those objectives, both from a technological perspective, but also from sustainability perspective, from a European Commission's perspective, are addressed in BAT4EU goals and projects. So what's your take on that? Do you think that we are in line with basically equipping the industry in the future to be compliant with the regulation and be basically comfortable with the sustainability goals that is there?
Okay, that's quite a challenging question. I can say that the partnership has to simply be compliant with all of the regulatory aspects. In the description of the topics as we publish them, we try to reflect as much as possible the European policy, including all of the regulatory framework. So in the first topics that we have published so far, there was still a bit of a question mark regarding what exactly the figures, the percentages and so on specified by the battery regulation would be. So we had to resort to putting a link in the topic description to say, please check what is currently in vigor and try to align with that. So I think our first step, major step, is going to be to update all of the targets for the partnership. And as you mentioned yourself, Bozorg, we have the strategic research and innovation agenda that is currently being revised. We expect to adopt it at the end of January. And now it is going to refer very explicitly to all of the numerical targets that are being quoted in the battery regulation. So in fact, we expect all of the projects to deliver a partial contribution in order to reach these overall targets. And for that, we work together with the partnership in order to monitor at a global level how much each of the individual projects are contributing to the overall targets. So I think at a top level, this is really what we are looking for. Aside from that, of course, there are other, well, quite a few other aspects, like the first demonstration of all of the technologies that are being developed. So far, we've allocated about 20% of the budget in the calls to recycling and circularity topics. And these are really crucial in showing that, one, the targets can be met, and two, that they can be met in an economically viable context. Because indeed, when you're talking about low value compositions like LFP batteries, this is going to be very challenging in order to meet the targets and meet them in an economically feasible way. And the same goes for the battery passport. Yes, we have the global guidelines that are being developed, but showing that it works and demonstrating that it is actually possible to track the provenance of the raw materials, to monitor the footprint, and to encapsulate everything in this battery passport is still going to be quite a challenging aspect. Sorry to disagree with you, Patrick. Indeed, the technology is there, but the implementation is going to be quite a challenge, I think.
Yeah, indeed. Great. So I want to give the floor to the audience question, and then come back to you for the follow-ups. But
there any question? If not, I have one actually.
Please.
Actually, while talking about implementing circularity in batteries, we are talking about recycling mainly and about the components, and we mentioned the different technologies and so on. But what about the maybe the design of the batteries themselves to improve circularity, in the sense that maybe if by standardizing the kind of cells, the prismatic pouch cell and so on, to quite standard size, don't you think that it could improve in the end the collection and the recycling, or even the remanufacturing route in the end, just to ensure circularity? Because we are betting a lot on recycling, which is today shredding, more or less, and bio and hydrometallurgy. We saw today that we have a lot of technology that should be applied to solid-state batteries, which are slightly different, but maybe standardizing a bit the size of the cells and the modules should help definitely. But there is nothing in the battery regulation about the size. So I was wondering, what is your opinion about that?
You're right, because when I was puzzled a little bit is your recycling efficiency can be affected by shredding. So I'm not sure that shredding will in the long term be the right solution for recycling of those batteries. And then you need access at least to the module or to the cells. And we did a project at AGORIA a couple of years ago on automated dismantling of battery packs. Because quite honest, the eco design of the car, because it's the car, it's not the pack itself, not always the pack, it's the integration in the car. That will be the challenging part. And for me, that's not the battery regulation, but it's the end-of-life vehicles regulation or directive. I don't know yet in which way it is going. And there they will put some emphasis on the eco design. But of course, the design of the pack, and then you see the complexity, has to do with your energy efficiency, your recyclability, your remanufacturing potential. Because if you want to remanufacture, you need access to the modules, at least. You need to dismantle it. And technology can be developed, but it's still premature. Think about machine learning, some robotics with machine learning, with visualization of this is a pack from that car manufacturing, which is glued. So I need to take that tool to. So there is a lot of challenges there, but I'm pretty sure technologically we will find something. But the remanufacturing, there are things going on. there you hit the wall of access to critical raw materials. If we have a ramp up of electromobility, we have a ramp up of the use of strategic raw materials. What do we prefer? Do we prefer to put them back again in a cycles of 10 years for stationary energy storage? Can be. Or do we prefer to recycle them faster and to use other batteries which contain less strategic materials for the energy storage? It's not decided yet. The market will decide. The availability will decide. And on top of that, recycling will be a mass operation. Besides the dismantling, I'm more a believer of dismantling, automized dismantling to recycle cells, not black mass. And once you have that automized, you can end up in reusing, remanufacturing batteries, but it will be challenging because you need access to the battery management system. You need to redesign it. How can you redesign if you have 5 batteries from that car, 10 from another one? Can you combine packs? I'm an engineer, but I've lost my engineering skills quite a long time ago, but I doubt that it can be industrialized. So challenging times, but some real opportunities for me on the horizon, given that we do the necessary technological developments. I think that's important.
Could you please,
If I can add something about, so if I understand your point, it's about how to harmonize the cell design and to facilitate recycling. But so here, that's more the researcher part or engineer part speaking. We see that depending on the technology, it will be hard to do this because some chemistry will be maybe more adapted to a cylindrical format in terms of safety or other stuff. But some other technology, especially solid state technology, are maybe more adapted to a pouch cell format because sometimes you need to apply a lot of pressure on the cells and stuff like this. So as today we have a lot of, I would say, battery technology today, and in the future with the development of solid state, we will have a lot of possibilities about what we want to put inside the car, depending on the application, if we want an affordable car, if we want a high energy density car. So based on that, and the fact that some chemistries are not compatible with maybe certain cell formats, it will be maybe difficult to have a, I would say, constant design or something like this.
And to be honest, for me, a crucial thing is to design recycling operations in such a way that you can cope with a big chunk of diversity of materials, of formats, because in recycling, it's mostly operations with a high capital invested. You need to have access to material at a certain scale, and then you better be broad in your technology, what you can cope with.
an online question? Sorry, Johan, please go ahead. If you can hear me.
Sorry.
Flo.
Sorry to intervene. I know it's perhaps not obvious for you to see if a hand is raised or not. No, just to add 2 things to the equation. I think maybe in the long run there will be standards for the battery types and so on, but certainly in the beginning, I think the differentiation that the OEMs can apply is going to be at the level of the batteries, especially in the premium market segment. Everyone is going to try and push their own standard that has its own benefits. And that is the only way really to make the distinction between Mercedes, BMW, Audi, and so on and so forth. On the other hand, we have another tendency that is now gaining renewed attention, and that is battery swapping. So from China, we have this renewed interest in battery swapping, so that in a few minutes you can drop the battery pack and replace it by another one. And of course, excuse me, the only way that this can work is if you standardize on the battery pack. So I think we will have two competing market forces, and in the end, it will be the market who will or that will decide on which direction we are going. And based on that, and in conjunction with the battery passport, I think we will see what is going to be the winning configuration. And like Patrick said, we will need a very flexible and adaptable recycling system that can cope not only with EV batteries, but also with light means of transport, the bicycle, the scooter batteries. All of these are going to come back and will need to be treated. So we will have such a multitude of types of configurations that it's going to be a complex problem.
Yeah, indeed. So you mentioned battery swapping, and that's where I think for battery swapping, what you need is batteries. So also the case with the solid state, we are working on the recycling, but at the end, the scale that can make everything cost efficient comes from actually the material to be processed and the material to be built. So for that, I think let's talk about raw materials a little bit, talking about we need more batteries and talking about the diversification, as Patrick mentioned, about the chemistries. So I wanted to ask Maria about that. How influential can that be? I think if we're going to go for other chemistries or making the portfolio larger, we need more actually infrastructure to build that. But within the long term, how can it help with many ideas from the business ideas or business cases?
Yes, so definitely we need to use different types of batteries for different applications. And for EVs, it might be the solid state battery containing critical raw materials with high energy densities. And especially if we are thinking like aviation, where the energy density is even more important, then we need to go for the lithium metal solid state in the best case. But then it doesn't make sense to use the same type of batteries for stationary storage or other applications where we would go with a lower energy density. So we definitely need to invest also in solid state, but also in the other chemistries. Sodium ion is coming very fast now. That is very much suitable for the stationary storage. Also LFP is there a good choice. And then other chemistries like the redox flow. So we have plenty of options, and it needs to be a wise selection that which chemistry we will choose for each application, so that we can have enough raw materials for the very critical applications where the high energy density is a must.
Patrick, what do you think about that? What do you think about taking the burden of difficulty with the diverse inputs to the recycling fit, but within that approach, making things easier at the earlier stage?
I think it's the only choice we have, and it's already there. I take another stream which is quite important, which is electronic waste. It's quite diverse already, and in order to have a viable business case, you focus on the different materials and you look on developing technology to cope with the broad range of raw materials. And that's, I think, personally also the competitive edge the European Union could have towards other regions, because we have a metallurgical history, we have knowledge. Why not use it and designing recycling activities which can really cope with that diversity? And we need every type of battery. I'm pretty sure about that.
Great. So let's go to another part of the battery regulation about the second life. And I want to ask Adrien about it. So the second life is been actually very discussed in the sense of, okay, what does it mean? Does it really help with the circularity? That's prolonged lifetime in a longer sense helps for us to keep the material still in the system? Or, I mean, this is $1 million question, but taking it back to the system and closing the loop to you makes more sense, or just using them as much as possible?
To be honest, yes, I'm not involved in these topics in my daily job, I would say. But of course, we are working on this topic of the second life, and yes, so to reuse battery after a certain decay of the performance, maybe around 80% of the initial performance, you can use it for, I would say, less energy war applications. But about the pros and cons of this second life battery, unfortunately, I'm not, I think, the good one today to clearly answer this.
Okay, thank you.
This.
I don't know if
Sorry,
you.
but
No, sure.
For me, extending a lifetime of a product from an environmental perspective is always better. Whether it's the original function or not, it's always better because you embedded CO2 right from the starting. You use longer in a longer product life. But of course, there are issues we have to consider, and it's quite complex. You have on the one side the ramping of electromobility with a huge research agenda in substituting or reducing critical raw materials in the battery, because that's part of the job of the research agenda. It is also part of the cost, which means that the first batteries coming back will contain more critical raw materials than the batteries we are putting on the market, which is an interesting equation. And we should try to be as efficient as possible, to be, on the one side, more independent of critical raw materials for Europe. We have a target of 25% also for cobalt, lithium within the Critical Raw Materials Act. Being in a ramping up market, it's challenging. So it's not a yes and no. And on top of that, we do see on the market that there are quite very few batteries available. And the batteries which are available for second life, for remanufacturing, are mostly the batteries which are from cars where they see at the moment they were put into circulation that there was something wrong with the battery, in order not to have any risk towards the consumer. So it's not a real end-of-life battery after first use phase. It's rather a pretty new battery with some issues in the manufacturing. So yes, extending the lifetime, I'm a believer of that because it creates value. Will it be for tomorrow? No, I think it's quite complex. I would really push innovation there also, because it's not that easy.
Exactly. So talking about not easy innovations, we talked about the targets in the regulation in terms of the recycling and the recovery rates. And as Johan mentioned, and as I talked about a little bit, we are pushing for more flexibility in the new agenda for upcoming years. I would like Johan to kindly extend on that. You have already talked about it in other gatherings that we were together. And this is, I think, a new kind of a aspect to the Syria compared to the previous years. What do you think about that? I mean, how do you position that approach to the flexible plans, both in terms of manufacturing and recyclability in the future work programs?
Well, I think the strategic importance for Europe is just going to increase. There is more and more emphasis that will be placed on the availability of raw materials. Now, for the time being, lithium is cheap. Prices have gone down because there is oversupply, but we already hear indications from China that there will be control of the market. And the first aspect is going to be graphite, where there likely are going to be export limitations. So I think we certainly need to diversify the approaches for recycling in order to also recycle this low value but high importance material like graphite. And the current methods do not work very well with it. And my personal belief is that direct recycling and trying to recover as many components as possible from the cells is going to be a very important vector for the future in order to maintain as much value as possible from the batteries that we recycle. So I can only see the importance increasing over time. This is already a very important activity in the battery partnership, and it is going to continue at that level or even higher.
Great, thank you. So I think we have 5 minutes left. For that, I just want to give you all 1 minute each and ask you from all the components of the battery regulation, both very specific and technical objectives to the more generic objectives. Which one excites you more? You think about it more, and you think it's going to be more challenging for the community to address? Which one keeps you up at night, let's say, if it is? Please go.
I have only one word, or two, in fact. The delegated acts. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, you have on the one side a lot of new obligations, carbon footprint classes, the first declaration, then the Commission will come up with carbon footprint performance classes, and then at the end they will say the battery has to comply with that carbon footprint. I'm only taking the carbon footprint as an example. Well, there is no delegated act yet how to calculate the carbon footprint. Let's take a battery from China. What's the carbon footprint? Is it the carbon footprint with the average electricity production of China? Or is it the green purchased electricity of the plant? How do we control it? It makes a hell of a difference. The performance classes, how stringent will they be? So you see, for me, the delegated acts define strongly the ambition level. The whole recycling targets, they have to be calculated. The devil is in the detail, and the detail we don't know yet. We know where we want to go, where we need to go, but the way towards it's still a journey.
Adrien?
I totally agree with that, especially on LCA. Yeah. We don't have yet a strict methodology to calculate it. And as I said at the beginning, what is the objective is, yes, to work closely with all players, but it's very hard to get raw data, primary data, to calculate carbon footprint, to calculate the exact recycling content that you want to put in the pack. So that's the challenge.
Marja, please.
Yes, I could say it's the amount of recycled materials in the new cells. The targets are coming pretty soon already. So do we have the secondary raw materials enough available in Europe so that we can fulfill these requirements?
Yeah, very, very interesting. And Johan, what should keep us at night awake. The partnership, what should we think most of? Or it's just everything. The problem is that we should think of everything at once.
Well, typically I sleep rather well, so I don't think about these things in my bed. But no, what I think has the most promise at the same time as most challenging is the battery passport, because certainly for the European market, it will be a very important tool just to, well, help protect the sector as well. I'm not talking about real protectionism that we should keep foreign batteries out, but we need to have a level playing field. And I think it is obvious that if you produce a battery using coal-generated electricity, it is going to be cheaper than producing a battery that is 100% green energy based. So this needs to be reflected somewhere, and the battery passport and the labels that we are going to see emerging over time are going to become a very important tool for that.
Okay, great. I think very the important part of the legislation, the passport, the recycling content, the emissions, most of all, and also the LCA data. But there are many more, and unfortunately, we are going out of time to cover all of them. But it was very, very interesting to have your text, very fruitful, especially for me. And thank you again for participation. Thank you again for the very nice discussion, all of you. Thanks.
Thank you, and sorry for not being
Thank you
able to
also
be
to
there
the
on
audience
site.
for being with us. The floor back to Lionel.